Chapter 1062. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. While the three of them were extremely weak, the rascals around them could not help but feel agitated. Qin Yu had said that he did not want the spirit fruit. Did that mean that they could get a share of the loot after the expert was seriously injured? When the three magnates saw that the situation was not good, they did not care about the hatred of being seriously injured. They politely asked Qin Yu who he was from. Such a demon-level genius, they absolutely do not believe that Qin Yu himself is a maverick. However, they had never heard of him before. Such a powerful and peerless expert had appeared. They quickly compared the person in front of them with each other. However, none of the peerless experts they knew matched the young man in front of them. It was troublesome to not be able to find him. Which sect is he from? The only personal disciple of Ultimate God Xian Tian. Ultimate God. There was only one Ultimate God who had recently broken through. It was also that Ultimate God. Countless of them had been paying attention to him. However, the name Xian Tian sounded familiar to the old monsters. It seemed that there was such a person 10,000 years ago who was extremely powerful. However, that person had disappeared for many years. As far as they knew, the person with the name Xian Tian had disappeared many years ago. Those were those who were slightly weaker, and they didn't even remember such a person. Only the three magnates knew about him. Only then did they know how powerful and terrifying the person with the name Xian Tian was. If that person had taught him to be so terrifying. Moreover, he was a talented disciple. It seemed to be an extremely normal thing. There were many guesses in front of them. How powerful must the person be to be accepted as his personal disciple? This was because the young and energetic profound Heaven's Celestial Venerable had once said these words in an extremely heroic manner. If one did not surpass him in terms of talent, he was not qualified to be accepted as his personal disciple. However, his own strength was already the best in the world. In the ninefold divine realm, no one's strength had improved faster than his. How difficult would it be to be faster than him? No matter how good a person was at bragging, they did not dare to be thick-skinned and say that their descendants were more powerful than Xian Tian. Is the person you're talking about related to the immortal realm? Are you from the Profound Heaven sect? But as far as I know, the Profound Heaven sect is on the decline. That's right. Back then, Xian Tian also left behind some disciples and grand disciples. The three magnates had failed, and they didn't care about this at this moment. If what Qin Yu said was true, then wouldn't they have made a fool of themselves? Qin Yu had a true God as his master. How could he possibly be interested in their little things? Who knew if Divine Master Xian Tian had something better in his hands, let alone a heaven's calamity fruit? After all, that was the legendary true God. Even the spirit fruits that they were constantly fighting over. And it was all thanks to Xian Tian Shenzhen that he was able to break through to the true God realm. The three leaders struggled to get up and sat on the ground. It wasn't that he didn't want to stand up and talk to Qin Yu with the attitude of an elder. It was just that they had just been seriously injured. At this moment, even if he could barely stand up, it would be obvious that he was exhausted. He could only sit cross-legged on the ground for the time being. At least he seemed to be in a peaceful state. No one could see through their calm exterior. It could be seen how much they had been injured. Even if they were sitting like this, many people would be able to guess it. They were actually seriously injured. However, it was still much better than directly embarrassing themselves in front of everyone. Qin Yu flipped his hand, and there were 3 immortal herbs with crystal-clear dewdrops in his palm. As long as he took a leaf of this immortal herb, he could immediately heal some non-fatal injuries. It could be said to be a life-saving weapon at a critical moment. However, Qin Yu took out such precious things with a flip of his hand. There were 3 of them. It was exactly the same number of people as the 3 leaders. Take the medicine and swallow it. After your injuries have healed, continue to spar with me. At this moment, the three leaders had already guessed. As expected, Qin Yu came to find them to train himself. However, even if they knew about this matter now, no one would say anything. Logically speaking, even if they were to be seriously injured because of this. However, as long as they sparred a few times, they would have an additional life force that could save their lives at critical moment. This was a very good deal. However, the premise was that it was really a spar. Qin Yu could defeat the three of them alone. This was only the middle stage of Senzen. As they sparred, their strength would definitely increase. The outcome of the battle was already decided at the beginning. There was no suspense at all. When the time came, it would be Qin Yu beating the three of them alone. Whether it was for their remaining dignity, or because they could not contribute anything and were embarrassed to accept such a precious thing. The three of them rejected at the same time. If he was really Divine Master Xian Tian's personal disciple, Qin Yu was also someone they could not offend. At least before they made a clear judgment, they could not act rashly. If Qin Yu was not strong enough, perhaps they would have to consider whether they could capture this personal disciple. They could use this to threaten Divine Master Xian Tian to give them a lot of benefits. They could not win even with the three of them together. Although they did not die, they were seriously injured at the same time. They lost with no dignity left. It's the three of us who are too ashamed to see others. You can take the heavenly calamity fruit. After thinking about it, it was not good to give it to anyone. None of them won. Although Qin Yu said he did not want it in the beginning. However, no matter who got the fruit, they were not willing to accept it. If they divided it and ate it, they did not know if it would be effective. Such a good thing would be wasted in vain. Because of this consideration, no one was willing to let others take advantage of it. It was a relatively fair choice to let it fall into Qin Yu's hands. When the time came, none of them would be able to get it. It was also a good opportunity to sell it. Why wouldn't he do it? It was a pity that these people were still kept in the dark. Until now, they had not been able to distinguish the difference between one spiritual fruit and another. Qin Yu had long known that the real heavenly calamity fruit was in his hands. The fruit that was being fought over was only the earth calamity fruit. Although there was only one word difference in the name, the effect was completely different. The difference in their value was like the difference between heaven and earth. Only those who had not seen it with their own eyes would confuse the two. If they had really seen it with their own eyes, they would be able to distinguish the subtle difference. Although it was subtle, the feeling that the two gave was completely different. You should first figure out what you are fighting for. Before leaving, Qin Yu left a sentence that made the three giants a little confused. They did not know what the meaning of this sentence was. Perhaps they had guessed it, but they did not dare to believe it. Chapter 1063. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. If what they were fighting for wasn't the real heavenly tribulation fruit, then everything they'd done before would be a joke. Moreover, they'd suffered heavy injuries because of it, so they'd shed all pretense of cordiality. There were many people like them. Almost all the old monsters in the God realm had made a move. The remaining one or two who hadn't made a move yet were just watching. Obviously, they'd all make a move soon. No expert could remain calm in the face of the three words, heavenly tribulation fruit. Even if they could remain calm for a while, they'd definitely go crazy for the heavenly tribulation fruit. They were just the first to make a move, so they'd gotten a chance. But even they'd become a joke. What about the others? If all this was just a scam, they didn't dare to imagine how messy things would become. It's just as you think. Next time, please use your brain and think carefully before you do anything. How could a real treasure bear more than a dozen fruits at once? Although it's a treasure, it's very different from what you're expecting. The three leaders thought about it and found it reasonable. However, they didn't dare to imagine the consequences of their misjudgment. Fortunately, they weren't the only ones who'd misjudged. Almost everyone else had misjudged. At least before Qin Yu's appearance, No one had thought about the fruit they'd been trying to find. Was it what they'd been trying to find? It wasn't that no one had doubted it before. But after all, there was no problem with the origin of the item. It was just that people had mistaken it at the beginning. Coupled with the heavenly tribulation fruit and earthly tribulation fruit, they did look similar at first glance. Thus, he managed to deceive everyone. If no one tried to use it, they wouldn't feel any obvious difference. At least for those who hadn't seen the real difference between the two. It was very difficult to tell the difference between the two. This made the three leaders unable to sit still. Even if they were seriously injured, they had to spread the news. It would be great if they could use this news to bring them some benefits again. After all, including them, there were still many people who were kept in the dark. Now they knew the truth of the matter. It didn't mean that other people knew. Of course, they had doubts about Qin Yu's words. After Qin Yu left, they checked again. They found that there were indeed many things that were wrong. They had to admit that perhaps they'd really made a mistake. What would happen after this? How much would it cause? How many people would it cause? How many people? It wouldn't have much to do with Qin Yu. This victory, he had gained a lot of combat experience, and he had a deeper understanding of his strength. His strength was already considered to be one of the best among some experts. At the very least, he would not be at a disadvantage when facing ultimate god Xian Tian. The others were no match for him. As long as it wasn't all the experts in the world, they would all rush up together. To him was be? To Lin then, at he at least then. He with translation his being translation with his translation his translation. Qin. Translation on's light translation on lot that in translation that he would s he. Here there. Shun there was here translation that day of that s. That. He didn't expect this day to come so soon. Things had been rather chaotic recently, and even he had gotten into some trouble. He didn't have much desire for the calamity fruit, but the hierarch did. Moreover, many people had their eyes on this place. The 9 venerables all had their eyes on the treasure. Qi Shinran also had a headache about this matter. Even though he was very powerful, he couldn't completely control this chaotic situation. Qin Yu's sudden appearance had aroused his vigilance. However, he didn't have too much energy to think about it until he saw Qin Yu's aura with his own eyes. It was very different from before. That was why he was shocked. It was impossible for Shinran to improve so quickly. Shinran had an absolute advantage since birth. If one really wanted to calculate the speed of breakthrough, it couldn't even be compared with the current Qin Yu. How can your breakthrough speed be so fast? Yes, you're a very talented person. At this moment, his mood was quite complicated. Although he was still vigilant, after all, Qin Yu had reached a level where he could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Previously, he was more skeptical. Why was Qin Yu at a level that even Senzin couldn't reach? He was able to make Shinran submit to him. Therefore, he had been vigilant since long ago and wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. He didn't want to be implicated. Moreover, after getting rid of Qin Yu, the other Shinran would also have to owe him a favor. After all, he was the one who helped them out. Now it seemed that he was in the wrong. There were really monstrous geniuses in this world. There were even geniuses that he couldn't compare to. Even if he was born with a great advantage in Shinran. Sometimes, he couldn't completely have this advantage. Most of the time, he had to admit that he couldn't compare to those true geniuses in some aspects. You're wrong. The so-called geniuses also have the word pride in them, and I'm not those geniuses. There will be a day when the geniuses fall forever. Everything I have now is based on my own strength, step by step. If there's anything different about me from others, perhaps it's because of this. Qi Shinran fell into silence. He had always wanted to improve, and in order to improve, he had paid a big price. What he was doing now was also to comprehend. In order to have a deeper understanding of the world, he wanted to control the power of time and space, but he had failed repeatedly. Now it seemed that perhaps he had asked for too much. That was why he couldn't achieve his goal. He had asked for so much, but he couldn't do so much. In addition, these things had taken up a lot of his attention. It made his goal no longer pure, and he couldn't find his original heart. This was the reason why he had failed again and again. Even if your strength improves, I won't easily bow my head. Just do as you said at the beginning. Defeat me and make me bow my head willingly. Kyoki Shinran was ready. The result of this battle wasn't important at all. It was just to fulfill the previous agreement. The current Qin Yu already possessed a strength that could make him willingly lower his head. If Qin Yu could really defeat him. So what if he had to work like an ox or a horse for Qin Yu? It would only be 10,000 years. Chapter 1064. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The final result was no surprise. Kyoki Shinran was defeated. Kyoki Shinran had experienced it himself. He could not refuse at all. Now that he had completely lost, he had no choice but to admit defeat. He could no longer refuse any of Qin Yu's requests. For the loser. As the winner, Qin Yu had the absolute right to deal with it. Even if he wanted to kill his defeated opponent on the spot, no one would say anything. Although Shinran would not really die. It would take countless years for him to come back to life again. And he would have to grow from scratch. He would have to pay a great price. Therefore, death was not completely without a price for Shinran. Not to mention that Qin Yu only wanted a drop of essence blood. It did not matter even if he wanted more. But in the end, Qin Yu only took what he wanted. Even if he wanted more blood essence, it wouldn't be any better for him. Kyoki Shinran was truly willing to bow his head this time. Qin Yu was now extremely powerful. The Qin Yu he saw in the beginning was extremely different. He couldn't even utter a single word of objection. He could only bow his head and wait quietly for his fate. If you don't want to follow me, you can continue to guard here. But if someone fights here, remember to control the situation. Don't let them make a big deal out of it. If there is some news about Divine Master Xiantian, you can deal with it as you see fit. Speaking of Divine Master Xiantian, Kyoki Shinran had to be vigilant against the expert who suddenly broke through to the true God realm. He was also extremely vigilant. Although he did not understand why, he was not ashamed to ask. To him, to be able to continue to live in this land where he had always lived. There was no better news than this. He also felt grateful to Qin Yu. As long as he gave him a drop of essence blood. For Shinran, this would cause him to be weak for 100 years. But as long as he was protected by treasures of heaven and earth, this time would slowly shorten. For him, it was not a great loss. 100 years would pass in the blink of an eye for Shinran. He did not care much about this time. It was because of this gratitude in his heart that he wanted to do more. He wanted to contribute as much as possible so that Qin Yu would not completely forget about him. When he remembered that he was not doing his job as a servant, then he would not have a good time. Divine Master Xiantian is my master. You just don't mind it. Don't take it too much. I think there are not many people in this world who dare to talk about the Divine Master. Kyoki Shinran was shocked. But when he thought of Qin Yu's ins and his strength, in the end, he Shenron's thought translation. For such a powerful person, if he had a master, he would be just as powerful. Thinking about it, it seemed to be a matter of course. It translation his master translation that translation. Take note translation. Suddenly, the towering wood divine dragon recalled something that happened some time ago. In his opinion, this matter wasn't that big of a deal. But it was related to Divine Master Xiantian. Someone mentioned Senzin Xiantian. There was only one word difference. It would be fine if it was just a coincidence. But if it was really the same person, then he had to be vigilant. Although there were quite a few people in this world with the title of Xian Tian, there were still many people in this world. After all, the world was big. It was normal to have the same name occasionally. But when Qi Shenran described the appearance of those people, Qin Yu knew that it was definitely not a coincidence. Speaking of which, this person was an old acquaintance of his. He did not expect to meet him here. Maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe it was fate that could not be understood. This is really a coincidence. But you just need to be a little more careful. That person is an old acquaintance. Qi Shenran knew that something was not right when he heard that. Although it sounded like an old acquaintance, Qin Yu was not excited to see an old acquaintance at all. It was just that Qin Yu's strength had increased a lot. Therefore, what happened back then was still in his memory, and it was very deep. But with his current realm, he did not think highly of his former opponent. Therefore, he only asked people to be a little more careful. This was to prevent anything unexpected from happening. But this guy did not learn his lesson at all. He came to the ninefold divine realm and dared to have designs on the master and disciple pair. If that was the case, he had to teach him a lesson. But before the other party took the initiative to attack with his current strength, there was really no need to find that person back then. Qi Shenran took note of that. After that, Qin Yu left without hesitation. He had achieved his purpose of coming here. He put away Shenren's blood essence for the time being. With his current strength, he could be said to be invincible. If he increased his strength again, he would not be able to find an opponent. Other than his master, perhaps no one in this world was qualified to be his opponent. Wouldn't it be too bleak then? It was better to continue looking for an opponent to train himself. When the time came, a breakthrough would be just a matter of time. Although the blood essence could rapidly increase his strength, it could also greatly improve him. But these improvements were brought by external things. Tempering himself was the most important thing for him. Xuelan, of course, supported Qin Yu unconditionally. With her current strength, it was somewhat impossible for her to catch up to Qin Yu. But if Qin Yu chose to train himself temporarily, it would give her a chance to catch up. The Wood Realm was still rather peaceful. Some of Shenren's movements were particularly noticeable. However, no one could guess what had happened. Only the hierarch might have some vague guesses. But he could not be sure. After all, it was just a guess. According to the current situation, it seemed a little too absurd. How could someone have such great strength? To be able to fulfill his promise in such a short time. Although he also knew that it was not completely impossible. But after all, in their minds, Shenren's strength was extremely high. It was so high that no one could surpass it. In their opinion, Shenron with such great strength was basically impossible to be defeated by others. Although they were respectful to Qin Yu, it did not mean that with Shenren's self-esteem, he would be open to others. These people would always be his subordinate. They were also pawns that he could use at will. These pawns were not qualified to think about what he had experienced, and they were not qualified to think about anything here. They just needed to follow his orders. Chapter 1065. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. He got an extremely powerful Shenmuism for free. However, Qin Yu did not mention this matter from the beginning to the end. It was not that he really ignored this matter. There was no need for that. Now that he had returned, he had achieved his goal. These people's matters had little to do with him. Even if Qi Shenran took this opportunity to express his loyalty, it did not matter to him. The most chaotic place now was the Wind Realm. This was because this was the place where the calamity happened. When Divine Master Xian Tian was undergoing the calamity here, no one dared to come and watch. After that, that piece of land had become a sacred place that everyone yearned for. After being nourished by divine power, that piece of land was quietly changing. Countless treasures of heaven and earth were growing on it. Countless mutated and powerful treasures were growing on that piece of land one after another. Moreover, because the quality of that piece of land had changed, even some plants that were difficult to grow could grow rapidly on it. Moreover, it was well nourished. As a result, everyone was arguing about the ownership of that piece of land. Moreover, there were some records of such a situation. It seemed that the divine power of the calamity had brought about changes to this piece of land. This change was not permanent. Therefore, within a short period of time, who could have the right to use this piece of land? It became a matter of great dispute. The second largest family wanted this piece of land the most. With this piece of land as the backing for their descendant, they could let the new generation grow quickly. Some of the talented disciples could also quickly rise. By then, they might be able to get rid of their reputation as the second largest family. As for the first-rank Sidhu family, there was no doubt that they had become the target of public criticism. Sidhu Hua wanted to guard this piece of land by himself. Obviously, it was not possible. The Sidhu family had been able to hold on until now. They had relied on the accumulation of generations of ancestors. However, they had experienced an unforeseen event. The current family head was just a young boy. His strength was not very high. Wouldn't such a person become a live target in the chaos? Moreover, with the Sidhu family's foundation, no matter how they declined, their collection was also very impressive. After all, it was the accumulation of generations. However, such a treasure was guarded by Sidhu Hua. In the eyes of outsiders, it was no different from a 3-year-old child guarding a huge treasure. They could snatch a part of it with a move of their fingers. If they were more domineering, they could even take all of it for themselves. This kind of wordless speculation made many people restless. Even the second-ranked family was the most moved. However, they still had some face and did not directly snatch it. Sidhu Hua at that time. Previously, he had listened to Qin Yu and with the help of a new bat. The speed of these people's improvement was very fast, which gave the entire Sidhu clan some confidence. Even if these people for the time being. However, as long as they continued to invest resources in it, even if it was pulling up the seedlings to help them grow, could get them translation could. At such a translation at such a critical time. It was enough for him to temporarily increase his prestige, or at least show it in front of everyone. Was translation to translation was to like compared to ordinary people. Sidhu Hua knew more about the person who was going through the tribulation. Perhaps he was the only one who knew this secret very well. He did not tell anyone. Sidhu Hua's heart was surging. Even if it was just a little help, then he would be able to completely stabilize his position. After all, that was the legendary Divine Master. Although everyone wanted to directly shed all pretense of cordiality and fight for the right to use that piece of land. However, no one dared to really provoke a Divine Master. If Divine Master Xian Tian reappeared on the land where he once stood, absolutely no one dared to have any thoughts. At that time, it would be good if they did not curry favor with him. After all, that was a Divine Master. Even if there were many Senzin together, they would not be able to defeat him. Everyone had no choice but to treat him nicely. No matter how many thoughts they had in their hearts, they could not show them at all. Sidhu Hua held it in his hand. It was after Divine Master Xian Tian broke through. He suddenly thought of him, so he left one for him. It was a communication talisman that could be used to contact him. Although he had not experienced enough danger to destroy his family yet, Sidhu Hua was also an extremely decisive person. He knew that with the strength of this batch of new students under him, it was impossible for him to truly protect his family, and it was also impossible for him to truly protect everything that belonged to him, if there was no absolute expert to hold the fort. At that time, everything in his hands would be taken away. No one knew how many traitors there were in the Sidhu family. However, after what happened before, he absolutely did not dare to have any good feelings for these blood relatives. He did not dare to have too much trust. After all, people were fickle. He had already seen it with his own eyes. Suddenly, an empty image appeared in front of Qin Yu's eyes. Sidhu Hua could not see the person on the other side, but who was it that had been speaking his mind? He wanted to make a new deal, as long as there was an expert to help him guard it. At that time, he could pay a lot of prices. He would not hesitate to bring the entire Sidhu family to rely on Divine Master Xian Tian. Of course, he also knew that although the Sidhu family was the number one family, however, for an ultimate god it was still somewhat dispensable. He only relied on the fact that he knew him and had met him a few times. He only dared to speak because they had a little friendship. Whether it would work or not, he had already said it anyway. If there was even a slight chance of success, he would definitely be able to sit firmly in this position. At that time, the Sidhu family would be able to slowly develop under his command. It seems that I still have to change the itinerary. Of course, he would not lose out. Not to mention how valuable the loyalty of the entire Sidhu family was. There were many opponents there, which just happened to meet his current conditions. This was already a deal that was sure to be profitable and not a loss. Although he wanted to go directly to the Earth realm just now to find the new Shenron, it did not matter even if he went to other places midway. Sidhu Hua was indeed a good person. Since Divine Master Xian Tian had left him a way to contact him, that was to give him a chance to make a request. Moreover, this request was considered equal. It was beneficial to him and not harmful at all. Sidhu Hua waited for a long time, but no one came. Once again, someone came to look for trouble. Although these people stared at the gifts with big and small bags, in fact, they were here to test the ability of the Sidhu family to survive. Then, they would see where to start. Chapter 1066. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. He sneered in his heart, but he did not show it on his face. At least on the surface, Sidhu Hua was very considerate in his etiquette. No one could find fault with him. However, they could understand his vigilance. Most people were wary of the Sidhu family. Even the Qi family, which was ranked second, did not dare to make a move easily. They were afraid that they would bring trouble to themselves. However, the Jiang family, which was ranked third, did not have so many scruples. They were only ranked third. They had just climbed up in recent years. Naturally, they did not have any worries. They only hoped that they could get more. The Qi family did not dare to make a move. In their eyes, they were cowards. They did not have so many scruples. They would get whatever they could. With the Sidhu clan's current state, could they really do anything to them? They would be lucky if they could not even protect themselves. Even if they failed, they did not think that they would lose much. After weighing the pros and cons, they naturally visited again and again. Sidhu Hua had been impatient for a long time, but he could not chase them away. This was because once they made a move, they might expose the fact that there were not many experts left in the family. After all, the elders had died in Qin Yu's hands. However, he could not laugh very soon. This was because the Jiang family had brought an expert who was above Senzin's level this time. It was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. Sidhu Hua's face darkened. He directly asked him what he meant by this. It was extremely rude to bring an expert to their house without permission. If they brought an expert to their house without permission, it would be considered as a provocation. It would be seen as a provocation. Jiang Wenchang had a smile on his face and seemed to be very happy. However, he was not polite with his words. This person is an honorary elder of my family. He has always wanted to see the power of the Sidhu family, the number one family. I couldn't persuade him, so I brought him here to broaden his horizons. There shouldn't be a problem. Although he said so, He occasionally sized up that person and saw his murderous look. He knew that it was not that simple. However, Situ Hua couldn't say anything about it. If his reaction was too big, he would be suspected. Even though there weren't many experts left in the clan. Only a few old seniors who didn't fight or snatch could be considered to have some strength. However, this person's aura was very strong. It seemed like he was at the peak of his strength. If he were to compete with those old fellows, it would be hard to say who would win and who would lose. After all, his stamina was there for all to see. Sometimes, strength wasn't just one of the factors. If you wanted to win, you needed to have abundant stamina and rich experience. Even external objects. The man was holding a pair of spiked maces that looked like they had been soaked in blood for years. Based on this point, the older seniors all felt that something was amiss. Therefore, it was somewhat inappropriate for him to step forward and fight with this person. Situ Hua was worried about what to do about this. Suddenly, a door appeared in the courtyard. Qin Yu stepped out with Xuelon and appeared in front of everyone. Because many people who had been here before knew him. Even those who didn't know him could feel the aura of an expert from his body. Therefore, he did not dare to act rashly. Although Qin Yu didn't have a boiling murderous aura, everyone saw his eyes. They couldn't help but feel a little scared. Their first reaction was to find a place to hide. When Jiang Wenchang saw Qin Yu, who had suddenly appeared, his thoughts became active. With his strength, he couldn't see through Qin Yu's true background. However, the person beside him quickly told him what he felt. This made him a little more vigilant. With such a dignified appearance, he definitely wasn't some old monster who hadn't appeared in the world. However, he had such a terrifying cultivation realm. Could this be the trump card that Situ Hua hadn't taken out all this time? As expected, the number 1 family still had some strength. However, he was alone. Who knew how much strength he had? Before the final moment arrived. He still couldn't let go of the countless wealth and benefits that seemed to be right in front of him. Situ Hua immediately went up to greet him warmly. His attitude was completely different from when he met the Jiang family. It was like heaven and earth. This made Jiang Wenchang extremely uncomfortable. This difference in attitude was a little too obvious, even if this wasn't his original purpose. He couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable in his heart. If he had known that this would be the result, he wouldn't have been so polite just now. He didn't give him any face at all. Situ Hua. Jiang Wenchang was in an extremely bad mood at this moment. Even if he knew that Qin Yu wasn't someone he could easily offend. This time, it was best to put on a show on the surface. However, he had always been arrogant, not to mention that he was from a new family. He also had his own young master's temper. However, his slightly arrogant expression fell into Qin Yu's eyes. Another young master who didn't forget about the world. He had some guesses as to how this young master's temper had survived to this day. Perhaps it was because he had been protected too well since he was young, so he was still a little naive. There were plenty of experts out there, and he actually relied on his arrogance to offend people everywhere he went. He wasn't afraid that one day he would end up in an extremely miserable state. However, he didn't know him and couldn't be bothered to remind him. Whether he lived or died had nothing to do with him. I didn't expect to see you so soon. Brother Qin, your strength. Situ Hua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he took a closer look. Originally, he thought that his speed of improvement was fast enough, because he was already preparing to break through to the Holy King realm. Although part of the reason was because of the elixir. However, he also had his own efforts. Originally, he was only a middle-stage immortal lord. To be able to break through to the Holy King realm in a short period of time, he was also a proud son of heaven. However, every time he met Qin Yu again, he could feel that Qin Yu's strength had definitely increased by more than one realm. This made him extremely terrified. He also had a feeling that no matter how hard he worked, he would definitely not be able to compare to Qin Yu. He also knew that this was not an illusion. However, he was still somewhat envious. He had a divine master as his master. He was extremely talented and hard-working. Moreover, there was no pressure or responsibility on him. Everything that countless people envied the most was easily available to Qin Yu. However, Situ Hua couldn't even be envious. He could only take this as an example to remind himself that there was always someone better in this world. Anyone who started from nothing was worthy of respect. Every genius needed to be treated with caution. He was already prepared to treat this as an ancestral teaching. It would be passed down from generation to generation, and everyone would abide by it. It was always right to be cautious. Chapter 1067. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jiang Wenchang watched the two of them chatting enthusiastically. Yet, he had been thrown to the side by himself. His mood was getting worse and worse. He slammed the table. A long crack appeared on the table made of high-quality materials, spreading to the corner of the table. It made cracking sounds as if it couldn't bear the burden. Then, Jiang Wenchang grabbed the table with one hand and threw it out. His target was the Qin Yu, who had never moved or shown that he was the other one. Although he seemed to be extremely angry this time. It was specially used to test Qin Yu's true strength. Although the realm was there, he still had some guesses. If Qin Yu's strength wasn't too high, then he had the capital to continue the negotiation. He was also confident that he could make Situ Hua choose to compromise in the end. If Qin Yu's strength was very high, then he would have to think carefully. Facing the table that suddenly flew over, Situ Hua's expression changed drastically. Without even thinking, he immediately retreated. Because he knew that Qin Yu's strength was much higher than his. So many of him added together couldn't compare to Qin Yu's finger. Even if he had the courage to be a human cushion, he could even risk his life. However, to Qin Yu and the others, he was definitely a hindrance. It was precisely because of this self-awareness that he had. Situ Hua dodged quickly without hesitation. The table flew in front of him, and the strong wind left a mark on his face. Blood flowed out of the thin and long wound. But when the table was a foot away from Qin Yu, it suddenly stopped. Then, he stopped abruptly without any warning. This was just the beginning. Under Jiang Wenchang's vigilant gaze, the table began to tremble slowly from the beginning. In the end, it turned into countless fine dust that didn't even fall to the ground. It turned into extremely light dust and dissipated between heaven and earth. Not even a trace of residue was left. If he wasn't extremely powerful, at least a part of the fine dust should be left. Jiang Wenchang knew that his strength was definitely no match for Qin Yu. But he didn't expect to lose so badly. With his current strength, he could at most barely dodge at such a critical moment. And if he wanted to do Qin Yu's level, it was absolutely impossible. If he were Qin Yu, he reckoned that even if he were to use all of his strength, he would only be able to stop the table. Then it would be torn apart and completely broken into pieces. Even the strong Senzin who was following him could only turn these tables into large particles of powder and fall to the ground. But he couldn't let a good table. One must know that these were all good materials, and the materials were extremely tough. Destroying them was also very. It was also very. In the eyes of that expert, achieving such a feat was no different from a legend. He had the intention to retreat. If it wasn't for the fact that he was paid to solve the problem, and if it wasn't for the fact that he had received a lot of benefits, he would have died. Moreover, he was also concerned about his own reputation. He wanted to escape without hesitation. If he really encountered any trouble, he wouldn't be able to push it away. The Jiang family didn't tell him that there was such a terrifying person in the Situ family. If the Jiang family hadn't told him that as long as he could successfully complete it, when the time came, he would definitely be given 30% of the things he obtained. He wouldn't come. This was the trouble. Jiang Wenchang clenched his teeth tightly and pulled the so-called honorary elder. Of course, these were all done secretly. No one dared to show it on the surface, whether it was for his reputation or to not be inferior to others. Even if he was extremely shocked, he couldn't show timidity and fear. Sidu Hua almost looked up to the sky and laughed. In comparison, Qin Yu and Xuelan seemed to be too calm. It was as if these were just sparse and ordinary things, and not so shocking. You asked me to come here for such a person? Qin Yu's words brought Sidu Hua back to his senses and reminded him of what he had just done. At this moment, he finally understood that he couldn't invite the Divine Lord. Instead, he accidentally let Qin Yu come over. He thought of the deal he had mentioned before and the current predicament of the Sidu family. Without hesitation, he ordered the guests to leave. He was chased away from the Sidu family just like that. Young Master Jiang and the honorary elder's expressions were ugly. However, they didn't dare to act rashly for a while and planned to leave temporarily. Anyway, they would come again after they found out Qin Yu's identity. It was almost impossible for them to give up. These people are really shameless. They think that they're really powerful just because they climbed to the position of the third family. In fact, many people are watching them make a fool of themselves. Situ Hua was also very disdainful. He didn't care about these people at all. However, at this juncture, he couldn't care so much. He just pulled Qin Yu to a relatively secluded place first. No one would barge in here. Of course, what he said wasn't an extremely secretive matter. Of course, he had to hide it from outsiders, but he didn't need to hide it from his own people. He also needed an expert to come over and stabilize the people's hearts. The one who broke through previously was your father, right? After receiving Qin Yu's affirmation, Sidu Hua's heart became more stable. He also had more confidence. With such a person, even if it was just a little bit of help, he was also confident that he would be able to gain a stable foothold. Sidu Hua didn't hide anything from Qin Yu. Thus, he told them a secret. At present, that piece of land was not only confirmed to be able to grow many treasures. It was also confirmed that many precious species could grow there. Moreover, some precious seeds could be put in there. It was very likely that they would get mutated fruit. Could mutate in a good way, or it could mutate in a bad way. But no matter what, the chances of success were higher. It was also because of this uniqueness that the few great families were fighting fiercely in private, whether it was for their own interests or to prevent others from developing. All of them were fighting fiercely. Sidu Hua wanted to restore the Sidu family to its original glory. It was extremely necessary to fight for the right to use a large piece of land for the family. Moreover, after the passage of time, the power of the land had begun to weaken. Obviously, if this continued for about half a year, the land would be useless. Therefore, they had already agreed that there must be a result within 10 days. Otherwise, no one could bear such a huge loss. It seems that you want me to ensure that the Sidu family can obtain the right to use the land. Sidu Hua could still see very clearly. His real purpose was not to obtain the right to use the land, but to completely stabilize his position. Chapter 1068. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. After Jiang Wenchang returned, the more he thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. After all, in his eyes, Qin Yu was all alone. Tell me, why did you run away with me? We're at the same level, but you embarrassed me. Of course, Jiang Wenchang didn't think about how pathetic he was just now. Instead, he blamed everything on the elder who went out with him. In his opinion, if the elder could be more strong-willed, he wouldn't have run away. The elder couldn't be bothered to talk to a young master who didn't know anything. How could such a thing be done so easily? Not to mention how much the Sidu family had, none of them knew anything. Such a powerful powerhouse had suddenly appeared. Who could guarantee that Sidu Hua didn't have more trump cards in his hands? If you're not willing to accept this, you can start preparing immediately. Speaking of which, he couldn't take this lying down. After all, ever since he became so powerful, no one dared to show him any attitude anymore. Even those who were more powerful than him had to show him some respect. This was because everyone knew that his combat strength was so powerful that he could even challenge people of a higher level. The Jiang family had paid such a high price to invite him over because they knew about his reputation. Qin Yu didn't need to divine to know that the Jiang family would definitely make a move on him in the future. When he left just now, Jiang Wenchang looked at him with an extremely unfriendly gaze. Obviously, he wouldn't let it go. It was because he could bring in more experts so that he could practice his skills. However, the strength of the people around Jiang Wenchang would be too weak. Of course, there was one more thing he had to do before dealing with this small family. He had to go to the Tribulation Land. That place wasn't very prosperous. However, due to the special circumstances, many people had their eyes on that place. The originally remote place had also changed because of such an unforeseen event. It had become a place of hubbub. Sidu Hua had a lot to say. However, he couldn't say a single word. Facing Qin Yu, whose strength had greatly increased, he couldn't raise his head. He could only try his best to be more respectful. Even if they could still say a few words, their actions were restricted by the rules. She had always been worried about whether she had done something wrong. Or perhaps there was something that could be easily picked out by others. There were many people standing guard around the tribulation ground. As long as he had some thoughts, those who wanted to get a piece of the pie had all sent their elite disciples to guard this place. Both sides minded their own business, but they were also on guard against each other. The land that had undergone great changes was now faintly milky white. It looked extremely pure. But the moment he set foot on the ground, Qin Yu was suddenly enlightened. Powerful lightning energy gushed out of his body. The aura of destruction radiated in all directions. Powerful lightning energy spread out in all directions. Under the ground, there seemed to be something resonating with the annihilation divine thunder. Countless mutated lands kept trembling. A majestic force broke through the ground. At the same time, the soil nourished by the divine power began to fade. He returned to his usual state as fast as he could. This place had been destroyed to begin with. If there wasn't a trace of residual divine power, it should have been a piece of scorched land. Now it was returning to the right path. Affected by the tremors, some simple bases that had been built collapsed one after another. No matter which side had sent out their men, when they saw this sudden change of events, they were all shocked. They quickly sent the news back to their families. Some people were a little braver and wanted to go closer to take a look. But the moment they came into contact with the annihilation divine thunder, they were turned into human-shaped charcoal. Such a miserable situation made many people afraid to go closer. After all the people had left, Yi Zichen stood up. Qin Yu, who was still standing in the same place, was still the source of the annihilation divine thunder. Unsurprisingly, he became the target of public criticism. Senzin? Another expert who is about to break through to real God. There hasn't been a problem for such a long time. How did he do it? Such a huge power. If I could share some of it, I could also become a top expert in the world. Everyone had different thoughts. The sounds of discussion never stopped. But if some people paid attention, they would realize, among the people who were discussing, none of them were from the Situ clan. These people remembered what kind of status Qin Yu had. Moreover, was such an expert someone they could casually talk about? They were afraid that he could kill all of them with just a flick of his finger. Even if he didn't do it himself. If he casually gave an order, it would be enough to make the weak die without a burial place. These discussions were unable to affect Qin Yu in the slightest. The power of the calamity faintly resonated with the Tao of Nirvana that he had always wanted. The remaining power was already extremely huge. But this part of power should have dissipated between heaven and earth within half a year. Even if Divine Master Xiantian was present, it was impossible to touch the extremely heterogeneous and impure power. Even if the power was indeed huge. But there were no restrictions. Moreover, the uncontrollable power was too dangerous. The stronger the power, the more uncontrollable it was and the more it couldn't be touched. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly turned blood-red. An ordinary person's body couldn't withstand such a strong power. But he had previously seized the inheritance of an Asura, and the huge power that the Asura had accumulated for countless generations. Of course, an ordinary person couldn't use this power for himself, but using the power of Asura to forcefully assimilate it, it was hard to say what the final result would be. The energy that was enough to destroy heaven and earth was completely extracted in one day. It was extremely violent. If it wasn't for Qin Yu's battle here and the extremely dangerous feeling that came from it, this huge amount of energy would never stay here so obediently. It was a mass of energy. To be able to grow to such an extent, he also had simple judgment. The bloody aura that filled the sky and the chaotic and noisy energy mass gathered together. The two advanced and retreated, almost not giving in to each other. But everyone could see that the bloody aura was spreading faster and more majestic energy. No matter how arrogant it was, no matter how dangerous it was, after a period of time, it was no longer the powerful power that ignored the rules of heaven and earth in the beginning. Now it had been weakened. In addition, Qin Yu used a strange existence of heaven and earth, the power of blood Asura. The power of blood Asura was also not bound by the rules of heaven and earth. If they were to really compare, the two huge masses of energy were almost equal. But after all, the heterogeneous energy mass was just a mass of dead things. As they fought each other, they were slowly defeated. The light was so dim that it was almost like a firefly. Chapter 1069. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation 10 Sacred Masters. 8 Heavenly Kings. All the famous experts in the Wind Realm rushed over. What they saw was Qin Yu completely suppressing the mottled ball of light by himself. In terms of hardships, if it were them, no one had the confidence to say that they would be able to take down the mixed light ball. However, they were all very knowledgeable people. After seeing the dark red veined patterns gradually appearing on Qin Yu's body, Red's initial astonishment completely turned into fear. All of this was very similar to the legendary Asura. The appearance of an Asura would often lead to the suffering of countless people. The most important thing was that none of the Asuras were weak. If an Asura with Senzen strength were to appear in the world, all of them combined might not be able to obtain a true victory. Thinking about it, their faces turned even uglier. Just as the battle between the two forces was about to come to an end suddenly, a few people appeared out of nowhere. Their strength was not bad. However, they did not distinguish between right and wrong and kept calling him Asura. Their intention was to kill Qin Yu on the spot. The light ball over there finally got this opportunity. It began to grow without hesitation. If it was someone with an unstable mentality, they would definitely not be able to stabilize their mind under the pincer attack of both sides. As long as there was a little weakness, the chaotic light clusters would easily break free from his control. At that time, it would be a huge disaster. How could he let go of something that was already in his hands and let it fly away for no reason? 10 sacred masters and 8 heavenly kings working together at the same time was a strange scene that had never been seen before in the world. And it was just to deal with a person who had just helped them escape a disaster. Sidu Hua's face was slightly pale. He hurriedly wanted to take out a communication talisman that could contact Divine Venerable Xiantian. However, the communication talisman could only be used once. If he wanted to use it again, he had to use a special method to restart it. Obviously, he did not know the special method, and did not know how to contact Divine Venerable Xian Tian. Don't do anything. He is the disciple of the Divine Venerable. In a panic, Sidu Hua could only try to emphasize Qin Yu's identity, hoping that things would not get too bad. Heavenly King Yahan's heart stirred slightly. Although thousands of thoughts appeared in his mind, he immediately refuted. Nonsense. How can you be certain of the truth based on your words alone? How noble is the Supreme Divinity! There is only one such person in the world. Why would he accept an Asura as his disciple? You're still young, so you probably don't know what kind of existence an Asura is. That is a monster that has no sense of reason but is extremely powerful. Whenever it appears, it will cause great suffering and suffering. Countless innocent people will die. Heavenly King Dahan immediately took out a magic tool that could detect killing intent. Generally speaking, this type of artifact was used to prove himself. It was also to prove that some people deserve to die, and where did they come from? This time, it was able to play its role. Then he would definitely be able to reap great benefits from this. This Dharma artifact could detect things from afar. They were taking advantage of the fact that Qin Yu was busy at the moment. He immediately took out the items and began to examine them. It was a tool that looked like a ruler. A bright red line of blood began to rise. Halfway up, he crossed the 10,000-word mark. He was still climbing up. Until they reached the highest point. The entire ruler looked blood-red. Anyone who saw this blood-red pool would be speechless. Heavenly King Dahan was proudly preparing to make a righteous complaint. After all, Qin Yu was busy now, so he would do whatever he said. But who knew that the red line still did not stop after reaching the peak? The thin line of blood was beginning to swell. The entire ruler was on the verge of collapsing. While he was talking about how to suppress Qin Yu in an extremely serious manner, the Dharma artifact in his hand finally could not bear the burden. It completely shattered into countless pieces. It was extremely sharp. It directly embedded itself deeply into his flesh and blood. As the master, Heavenly King Dahan could not bear the burden. His body was covered in wounds of all sizes. Countless fragments were embedded in his flesh. It was a troublesome thing to pick them out. He had not finished speaking in front of everyone, and he had already revealed such a sorry state. There was no need to mention how angry he was. On the contrary, those who did not have a good relationship with him were happy to watch him make a fool of himself. Heavenly King Dahan could not bear it any longer and struck out with his palm. Earth Emperor palm. Then, he followed up with another punch. Heaven-splitting collapse. This time, he was extremely angry. He used his absolute strength the moment he went up. He was originally suppressed by Qin Yu again. The mottled ball of light felt two huge forces. It instinctively produced a suction force. This force did not land on Qin Yu. It also did not have any effect on Qin Yu. It merged into the mottled ball of light. It was originally a ball of light where all kinds of forces gathered together. Because of this sudden powerful force, it finally regained some light. But other than that little bit of light, there was no effect at all. Heavenly King Dahan could not accept such an outcome. In his opinion, everything should have been very easy. But things had completely deviated from his intentions. At this moment, Qin Yu clearly did not have the time to care about him. This attack would most likely land on the ground, and he was well aware of his own strength. No matter what, he would be able to seriously injure someone. After that, he would be able to take the biggest share of the benefit. But all his calculations were completely miscalculated because of such a small unforeseen event. Who knew how many people were watching him make a fool of himself? This increase in strength. It was not completely without any change. It was just that this change was not very obvious in the eyes of outsiders. The ball of light's strength increased. In order to recover this huge force as soon as possible, Qin Yu needed an extra minute to hold it. Even though it was just 1 minute, it was still a huge consumption. Of course, a portion of the power that was completely absorbed by the ball of light would also completely merge into his body. It was used to increase his strength. Although before coming, he had not thought about how high his strength would really be. But plans could not keep up with changes. Since there was such a good opportunity, it was very compatible with him. It was a pity to give up for nothing. Heavenly King Dahan had failed, but there were still many experts left. They just stood there, ready to attack at any time. But they did not choose to attack immediately. Instead, they chose to watch for a while. In this way, the biggest problem was not how to get rid of the Azura. Instead, it is how to get rid of Qin Yu while avoiding that strange power. Sidu Hua was so anxious that the corners of his mouth began to curl up. But his words carried little weight. After this matter, he knew even more clearly. If he did not have strength, no one would care about his identity. Even if he was already the head of the family. Strength was that important. Chapter 1070. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, the halo that had been suppressed to the extreme. Under the strong pressure, it could no longer hold on. However, before it dissipated, it still wanted to counterattack. Even though there was very little power left in its body, as long as it released a part of it, it would definitely cause a great impact. Don't even think about it. Qin Yu didn't use any strength. He already knew what this light ball was going to do next. As for the others, they were still clueless about this danger. Originally, as long as Qin Yu was here to guard it, even if the light ball wanted to destroy the last bit of its remaining power, it was also completely impossible for him to do so, because the light ball itself had already been exhausted to the extreme. As long as Qin Yu maintained the current momentum, he could safely eliminate all the hidden dangers. But there was no lack of idiots in this world, especially those who were extremely stupid and thought that they were very smart. These people would never understand what they were doing wrong. Instead, they would stubbornly do as they pleased. Among the 10 great saint masters and 8 great heavenly kings, although one of them had almost no strength left, even his willpower had been damaged. However, the rest of the people were all extremely famous seniors. With these people in charge, no matter what family came, as long as they didn't have enough experts, they wouldn't be able to compare to them. Most of these experts had not been recruited by any means. They were also super experts who didn't belong to any family. Of course, they didn't have any scruples. Instead, they had always done things according to their own ideas. The experts joined forces. Chaotic wind rising. Mist butterfly storm. Explosive flames spear. The owners of these attacks thought that they would definitely succeed this time. But they didn't expect that it was precisely because they suddenly attacked. But it gave that force the room to completely erupt. Originally, what he lacked the most now was time and Qin Yu to force him into a tight corner. There was no room for him to play at all. These people rashly attacked, but it led to the final tragedy. The power that was being persuaded by Qin Yu. After absorbing so much power of the experts, it expanded rapidly. Although it wasn't as powerful as before. But it also carried an extremely powerful destructive power. At this moment, anyone with a brain would be able to see it. There was something wrong with the situation. These attacks were not as effective as they thought they would be. Instead, it caused such a huge explosion of power. However, at such a critical juncture, the 10 great saint venerables and 8 great heavenly kings all left. This power was too strong. If they stayed here and got caught in the crossfire, they would lose half their lives. At that time, if someone took this opportunity to make a move on them, no one could survive. On the other hand, those who had been standing at the periphery and pointing had not left with the intention of watching a good show. This time, he would be completely implicated. However, those experts had no intention of taking them with them. After all, these people were too weak. Furthermore, the current heavenly kings and heavenly sovereigns could not even protect themselves. It might be easy to bring 1 or 2 people along. But how could they bring so many people over? A rough calculation showed that there were at least 1,000 people here. At the very most, there were only 18 of them. How could they possibly take all of them away? Even if it was barely enough, they would have to pay a huge price. And this price was not proportional to the final reward. These people were not strong enough to begin with. Naturally, no one would pay such a huge price for these people who were not strong enough. Among the people present, only the people from the Situ clan did not retreat. Especially Situ Hua, who had been standing on the same spot. Even if the powerful force that was released had already left wounds of all sizes on his body. Those mixed forces were extremely chaotic and powerful. When they were released, they quickly spread out in the shape of countless blades. At this moment, there were already many people who were not strong enough. They were chopped into pieces by the wind blades released by the powerful force. As for these powerful and chaotic energies, when they approached Qin Yu, they all dissipated into nothingness. He had already done his best. If it were not for those sudden attacks, there would not be so much chaos. However, at this juncture, the people around him would more or less be affected. However, this place was originally a desolate and uninhabited place. Later on, the people from the various clans all fought for territory. There were not many innocent people who could stand here now. Even if they were slightly affected, they would not suffer heavy losses. Humph! It's just a bunch of dead things without intelligence and thoughts. The surrounding wind was raging, but it was only in this position. It was precisely because of this sudden gust of wind. The light that was already small and dim. This time, it was completely extinguished, like a lamp that had been blown out. Only wisps of green smoke were left to prove that it had once existed. And all of that power had been integrated into Qin Yu's body. This was an extremely risky move. The powerful and sharp power suddenly entered his meridians. It caused an extremely strong destructive force. But this power had not become too arrogant. It remained in his body. The will of the Azura woke up unwillingly. It directly suppressed this expanding power with a powerful force, as the power was extracted bit by bit. The tornado, which had originally seemed to be extremely large, was completely destroyed. This time there was basically nothing left, until the last wisp of wind completely disappeared. The crisis just now had all disappeared into nothingness, although the surrounding sand and stones were flying chaotically. He looked as if he had just experienced a great disaster. But after all, everyone was still safe. Even if there were a few unlucky people who had died. But the damage had been suppressed to an extremely low level. Situ Hua couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. His choice to stay seemed to be extremely risky. But it was because of trust that he knew that he had to stay. Although he would take a lot of risk. But if he won the bet in the end, then he could succeed. To Qin Yu, it was to express his goodwill and to always stand on his side. Even if Qin Yu didn't need it, he still had to show a superficial attitude. Qin Yu looked at everything around him. At this moment there was no special mutated land. Because the reason why the land mutated, it was because that ball of light accidentally revealed a little power just now. With that ball of light, that piece of land could be preserved for nearly half a year. Now that the ball of light was gone, there was naturally no so-called mutated land. This matter is not a big deal. If I can't get it, no one else can either. The Situ family is still the #1 family. He had basically achieved his goal. Chapter 1071. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Holy Venerables. Heavenly Kings. None of them left. Moreover, he stood at a distance, observing the power of this area. When they saw the huge tornado, they thought that their guess was right. Everyone on that side would die without a burial place. But soon, the huge tornado began to shrink and weaken, until the last bit of energy was gone. Only then did they realize that something was wrong. This power came and went a little too quickly, wasn't it? No matter how they thought about it, it was unbelievable. When the Jiang family heard the news, it was too late. The divine land that everyone had their eyes on had turned into a wasteland. Now it looked like a piece of scorched earth. This should have been the real appearance of that piece of land. However, because of this, all the effort and energy they had put into it had gone down the drain. Even they had only wanted to invest in many precious species, such as Lingji and Lingji. All of their energy had been sucked away. They gradually withered. Some of the more delicate ones could not be saved on the spot. As a result, almost all the families had suffered heavy losses. Those who had directly invested their hard-earned capital in one go were even more heartbroken. Some people had even lost half of their wealth. This time they had lost everything. However, everyone was more concerned about the identity of the person who could cause such a change. It was Jiang Wenchang from the Jiang family. When he saw the simple portrait, he suddenly realized that he had seen him in the Sidhu family before. However, he had no intention of hiding this news. Thinking of the different opinions outside, he directly revealed this news. As for who would see this news and what kind of trouble the Sidhu family would face because of this, he could not care less. He couldn't care less. This time, the divine soil was gone. It was impossible for the Jiang family to not get anything. If you ask me, I think we should go according to the previous plan. Now that everyone is not on guard against us, this should be our best opportunity to make a move. Right now, the Sidhu family is in the position of the family master because of a young boy. He even made a series of ridiculous actions. They should have been destroyed long ago. We have only sped up the process. Moreover, this will happen sooner or later. We can't let others take advantage of us. All sorts of theories emerged one after another. Most of the people in the Jiang family had such thoughts. Furthermore, he never thought that he had done anything wrong. It was precisely because of this that they quickly made a series of arrangements. Wealth and silk move people's hearts. Many people wanted to seize this opportunity to attack the Sidhu family. It was just that many people had evil intentions but no guts. With the Jiang family taking the lead, many people would be able to take advantage of this opportunity to make a move. When the time comes, we'll help them and get a share of the loot. It'll be a good thing for everyone. For a while, many people became honorary elders or nominal elders of the Jiang family. All in all, these people were invited from outside and were not from the Jiang family. But even if they knew this, no one said anything, because the Jiang family had concealed this matter very well. No matter how arrogant he was, he did not reveal any flaws from the beginning to the end. After all, the current patriarch wasn't a fool. Everything was arranged in an orderly manner, and there were no flaws from the beginning to the end. This was also to make sure that no one was prepared for it. Sidhu Hua knew that some people might not be able to hold back and attack him. But he didn't expect all of this to happen so quickly. At that time, he was preparing for the banquet and wanted to properly entertain Qin Yu. He had prepared countless rare delicacies for this. But these things didn't have time to be put to use. The door was suddenly broken open. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be broken open so easily. But this was a banquet after all, and a few people accidentally sneaked in during the bustle. In addition, a few ingrates cooperated from the inside and outside. Soon after, the door was broken open. "I'm sorry to let you see this." Sidhu Hua's expression was quite ugly. These people didn't give him any face at all, even if he was lacking in qualifications now. But after all, he was the person with the highest status in the number one family. Even within the Sidhu family, no one dared to go against him. What qualifications did these outsiders have to barge in directly? They didn't even greet him and just barged in like that. Now, Sidhu Hua knew that his status wasn't high. The most important thing was that he wasn't strong enough. But even if he wasn't strong enough, not everyone could take advantage of him. Otherwise, where would his family's dignity be? I need an explanation. Why are you here? Are you going to shed all pretense of cordiality and attack me directly? How come I didn't know that the Jiang family was so sanctimonious and didn't know how to be patient at all? Jiang Wenchang bore the brunt of it. At this moment, looking at the group of people behind him, his confidence was unprecedentedly high. Moreover, they had already brought so many people and barged in. There were still no more powerful experts to attack. This also proved that their guess was right. Now, there weren't many experts in the Sidhu family. Previously, they had experienced such a huge internal strife, and later on, they were tormented for a period of time. Basically, most of the experts had died in the internal strife. How could there be enough experts to resist them? But for Qin Yu, who was still here and hadn't left. Jiang Wenchang was more or less a little vigilant. This person definitely couldn't be underestimated. Jiang Wenchang's eyes turned slightly, and a plan surfaced in his mind. Since he had already instructed him before coming, this person couldn't be easily offended. Then, he would try to recruit him. If the recruitment was successful, he would be a very good helper for them. It didn't matter if the recruitment failed. This time, he had brought so many people. Could it be that there was no chance of victory at all? Your future is limitless, and you will definitely reach great heights in the future. Why do you want to stay with the Sidhu family, which is destined to decline? Whatever Sidhu Hua offered you, as long as you stand on my side, I will give you double. At this moment, Jiang Wenchang, who felt that the holy spring was in his hands, spoke very confidently. Anyway, when the time came, as long as Qin Yu stood on their side, their chances of victory were too high. The entire Sidhu family had collected so much wealth. Was there no way to pay these things? Previously, he had used this method to rope in the group of people behind him. If he used the same method again, he felt that this person should at least hesitate. As long as he hesitated, wouldn't it be easy to deal with Sidhu Hua alone? He thought very well, but it attracted laughter. Chapter 1072. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The noise grew louder and louder. Soon, Jiang Wenchang heard a fact that he could not believe from the whispers and joke. Back then, Sidhu Hua had promised more than half of the things that he had given out for his own use. He had indeed given out almost 2/3 of his collection. The Sidhu clan had a huge collection to begin with. 2/3 of their wealth was an astronomical figure. Even if they sold the entire Jiang clan, they would not be able to gather such a huge sum. Not to mention doubling it. 2 Jiang clans might not even be able to gather that much. Even if 3 Jiang clans were to be added together, the value would barely be enough. Under such circumstances, if Qin Yu had really agreed, he would not have been able to take out so many things. Jiang Wenchang could not believe it when he heard the truth. He even felt that he must have been cheated. How could someone take out so many things just to get an expert to stand by their side and help them? Even though he had invited so many people this time, he had only expected to give out half of the Sidhu clan's collection. However, Qin Yu alone has already defeated so many people. How can he dare to believe this? However, I don't believe it. This must be a scam. Do you think I'll believe such an idiot's words? Using more than half of the clan's wealth in exchange for temporary help? If you really have the guts to do this, you'll bankrupt the clan sooner or later. You might as well not waste it and just give it to me. Sidhu Hua looked at them with a half-smile. This guy had always been stupid. Moreover, he was born in a small clan and had no knowledge at all. He did not know how terrifying a true powerhouse could be. Previously, he had burned his boats by spending this sum of money. After that, this was the only good thing about him now. After all, he had great foresight. The Sidhu clan could not be compared to this pair of master and disciple. That was why he had acted so decisively earlier. This time, he might be able to get some help at a crucial time. Looking at it from a long-term perspective, It was definitely a win-win situation for him. This matter, Qin Yu interrupted Sidu Hua before he could finish his sentence. It's not to help you this time. It's just that I can't stand it. Jiang Wenchang had a bad feeling. He also knew how terrifying the great power that Qin Yu had displayed earlier was. At this moment, he didn't dare to delay at all and directly hid in the crowd. With so many people between them, he wouldn't be seriously hurt. The others were also too extreme. They were blinded by the benefits in front of them. He immediately rushed forward. This time, a total of 7 people rushed up. All 7 of them had arrived at Shenzhen. 2 of them had even reached the late stage. Even with such a powerful force, he still had to use such a despicable method. It was indeed shameful to snatch something that belonged to someone else. Qin Yu now had the strength of a late-stage Shenzhen. Moreover, he had just used the power of an Azura, so it was inevitable that he would lose control of it. Although his willpower was extremely strong and he could completely control this power that did not originally belong to him, he was still able to control it. However, he was more or less affected. If someone ran over to die, he would fulfill their wish. Since they were all here, he might as well leave no one behind. The 7 people surrounded him from all directions. However, they were not a team after all, and there was not much tacit understanding to speak of. Each of them had their own ideas. These people had completely blocked off all the escape routes from all directions. One of them was good at beast taming. He was actually riding an extremely beautiful white crane. Standing in the air and constantly attacking from a distance, it was extremely troublesome. The others were guarding everywhere, completely surrounding him. Such a tight encirclement was almost completely covered, so no one could see Qin Yu's figure. Suddenly, in some of the gaps where this group of people came into contact with each other, there was a burst of bright light. After a series of screams, these people were all sent flying and smashed heavily. And Qin Yu was still unscathed. As long as he was serious, these people were no match for him. In this way, Situ Hua naturally struck while the iron was hot. He let those old seniors in the clan who were not involved in the dispute but had some strength take action. They could more or less share some of the pressure on Qin Yu. However, since this group of people appeared, they did not play any role at all. Qin Yu alone had already held back 5 or 6 people. The last remaining one was too timid to go over, so he was barely able to escape with his life. Jiang Wenchang was already prepared with a pale face. He would take advantage of the chaos to find an opportunity to escape. It would be best if he could run far away and find a place where no one knew him. In this way, no one would be able to find him anymore. Now, so many people were all dead. The Jiang family would definitely not have a good ending. He could see this very clearly. As one of the people who participated, he was very clear about this. This time, he had to go back in one piece, but he did not bring back a single person. He would definitely be severely punished. The best thing to do was to take advantage of the fact that the news had not completely spread. No one would pay attention to him. He quickly packed his bags and the belongings that he had accumulated over the years. He ran as far as he could and rolled as fast as he could. However, just as he ran out of the door, before he could quickly return to the clan, suddenly, a white silk appeared and directly rolled him back. Like a tightly wrapped spring silkworm, he fell among the crowd. He looked quite embarrassed. A corner of the white silk was even stuffed into his mouth. He could not speak or spit it out. He appeared in front of everyone in such a sorry state. His face turned blue, but he could not say a word. You actually still want to run? Do you want to abandon these people and roll as far as you can? Situ Hua did not hesitate to expose the last bit of thin skin on Jiang Wenchang's face. He wanted to run away from him easily. How could it be so easy? Many of these people had nothing to do with the Jiang family. These people had been wronged. However, they found that Jiang Wenchang, one of the main culprits, wanted to run away. They would definitely be angry. It would be troublesome to kill all of these people. If Qin Yu did not have the intention to kill all of them, it would more or less bring some great trouble to the Jiang family. As expected, those who were still alive all looked at Jiang Wenchang with hatred. Now that they could not even protect themselves, Jiang Wenchang actually wanted to abandon them. The benefits that were originally agreed upon were now gone. Even their lives were in danger. Heads fell to the ground one by one. Jiang Wenchang was so scared that his eyes rolled back. A puddle of water appeared on the ground. Chapter 1073. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jiang Wenchang, who was in a sorry state, was sent back to the Jiang family. Countless people gathered to watch the show. Among them was the Qi family, who had not shown up and watched the tigers fight. This time, they were also secretly watching everything. The few elders of the Jiang family could not sit still anymore and stood out. However, the situation now was too bad. The moment they saw Jiang Wenchang, they immediately denied everything they had done. Even a discerning person could tell. How was it possible for Jiang Wenchang to rope in so many experts by himself? However, all of these old ancestors were adamant about it. They did not know at all. It was Jiang Wenchang who acted on his own accord. Also, no one was able to truly grasp their weakness, unless someone could produce evidence. Jiang Wenchang looked at the countless people around him. How could he not know what would happen to him in the future? Compared to the entire big family, of course, no one cared about his life and death. Even if he was the most favored young master, he was still used to pay for his crimes in the end. I'm not convinced. Why? I didn't do this at all. You guys told me over and over again. You said that the Sidhu family was big and had countless wealth. When the time comes, if you could give me a little, it would be piled up like a mountain. At that time, you said it was easy to get. Why are all of you scared now? If you have the ability, all of you should stand out. If he really admitted to such a big crime, there would be no wealth, not to mention obtaining any benefit. From then on, he would definitely die. If that really happened, no one would care about what a person like him was doing or thinking. He would die in some corner that no one cared about. Even if he was thrown into a mass grave and eaten by a wild dog that came out of nowhere, no one would care about what happened to him. Qin Yu moved his fingers. The white silk that had been wrapped around Jiang Wenchang's body loosened and returned to his hand. He received a signal that he was going to be released. Jiang Wenchang thought that he saw hope. At this moment, he only said a few words and temporarily let go of the restraint on him. If he said more, he would have revealed a lot of things that the outside world would never know. Would he be able to atone for his crimes? He did not ask for much, as long as he could save his life. Furthermore, he allowed him to take away the wealth that he had accumulated over the years. When that time came, no one would be able to find him. Not to mention the revenge of the Jiang family, who could not even protect themselves. The elders of the Jiang family were furious. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he could only threaten them verbally. Even though he had already endured to the extreme, he still cared about his last shred of face. He did not make a move in front of everyone, but his expression was extremely ugly. He couldn't wait to kill this unfilial grandson of his. It could be said that the last bit of hidden danger had been removed. When the time came, there would be no evidence. Who could say that they knew? They could just casually pull out a few scapegoats. That way, they would be able to maintain their position in the clan. No one could tolerate a family that was unscrupulous, even if it was the most suitable choice for them. If the Sidhu clan was truly past its prime, he might as well give it to them for free, so as to avoid being used by a bunch of trash for so many years and wasting large amounts of resources. What a pity that would be. This dog-eat-dog scene was a good show for everyone to watch. In particular, the Qi family, which was ranked second, was even more vigilant. At least for now, they could not easily provoke the Situ clan. It was not because of that little brat, Situ Hua. It was only because of Qin Yu. This person's identity was unknown, but he was extremely powerful. The strength of the people that Jiang Wenchang brought with him was already extremely strong. Although the Qi family could bring out more people and more powerful people, the Qi family could not afford to do so. However, they did not have absolute confidence that they could win. Now that the Situ clan's foundation was still there, they still had a chance to snatch the position of the number 1 clan in the competition later. There was no need to use such underhanded means to snatch it now. There were plenty of above-board means. Those who originally wanted to make a move on the Situ clan were all discouraged. They were not prepared to get involved in this. Otherwise, they would end up like the Jiang family in the future. These people were dog-eat-dog. In one breath, they revealed a lot of secrets from many years ago. At that time, the Jiang family had not yet climbed to their current position. They were just a small, medium-sized clan. At that time, Jiang Wenchang was already born because his talent was not bad. He was considered to be a key nurture, so he knew a lot of things. At this moment, regardless of whether it was true or not, he revealed everything in one breath. In an instant, the Jiang family became the target of public criticism. These things could not be brought out in the open. If they were really brought out in the open, those things that no one suspected back then, it would become full of loopholes. If some people continued to investigate, it would be extremely easy to find out everything that they had done back then. Unfortunately, whether it was a guess or not, now that they were dog-eat-dog, there were many questions that could not be solved. After this argument, many people found the answer. At this moment, the elders also found out. The more they continued to argue like this, the more they would be exposed. They might as well not continue to hide. After all, there were so many people present. It was not that they did not have a good relationship with the Jiang family. Jiang Wenchang did know a lot of things. However, he didn't know everything. With this thought in mind, he simply went all out and admitted most of the things in one breath. However, after that, he sought an alliance with the people around him. However, some people who were originally in cahoots with them were a little uncertain now. During the argument just now, they revealed themselves, partners who had been cheated by the Jiang family. There were countless of them. There were even some who were completely unable to regain their former glory after being cheated. The Jiang family was able to have their current status and glory. It was not unrelated to those who had been cheated by them. Just like that, they had annexed all the way. In addition, they were indeed quite lucky. They also had some status. However, in essence, they were still from a grassroots background. Even their views had not changed much. Until now, they still liked to use force to seize power. However, the Jiang family's current strength could not be underestimated. These people were angry and joined forces to attack. However, they could only be beaten back. Only then did their minds clear a little. Even if everything in the past was related to the Jiang family, it was not easy for them to shake this big tree together. Therefore, some people took the initiative to set their sights on Qin Yu. Indeed, they could not shake this big tree, but it did not mean that others could not. Now, the Jiang family had courted death and provoked an existence that they could not afford to provoke. Could they watch all these scourges die with their own eyes? Chapter 1074. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. I beg you to get rid of all these despicable people in one fell swoop. That's right. If there was anyone who had such powerful strength now, he could forget all these people, and let them all be punished. Among the people present, only Qin Yu, whose identity and origin were unknown from the beginning to the end, possessed such strength. Those who were dissatisfied or wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. Those who attacked the Jiang family all looked at him with anticipation. They looked at Qin Yu. Some of them looked at Situ Hua. After all, he was brought here by Situ Hua. Among the people present, only Situ Hua had the ability to speak a few sentences with Qin Yu. However, Situ Hua would never interfere in this matter. He was not qualified to interfere. They seemed to be certain that they would not be a threat. Some of the elders of the Jiang family had completely let go this time. They had thought it through. After all, they had powerful strength. Falling out with them would cause them to face danger later. However, it would not cause them much trouble in the short term. There might be some trouble, but it was not worth mentioning at all. As long as they could live well, they could do a lot of things in the future. Are you done talking? What was unexpected was that Qin Yu, who had basically only been watching this farce ever since he arrived, was actually standing there. After the matter was basically confirmed, he opened his mouth to speak. The moment they heard this, some people were happy while others were nervous. Jiang Wenchang, on the other hand, couldn't stop trembling. The last time he heard Qin Yu speak in such a relaxed tone. Not long after, he returned in defeat. The experts that he brought over all became corpses. After that, the Situ family dealt with them, and the corpses no longer existed. Now that he heard this familiar tone, he did not dare to think about what would happen next. Before the others could react, Jiang Wenchang ran away. Anyway, no one would notice him at this moment. However, he forgot that he was arguing with the Jiang family members and others. They had been watching him all along. At this moment, he suddenly broke into a run. At this moment, he had already used all his strength to run. In the eyes of others, he had other plans. It turned out that the previous words were all to pave the way for him to escape easily. Jiang Wenchang didn't manage to escape and was quickly intercepted. However, since he was able to obtain his current position, he naturally had strength. He casually took out some of his trump cards that he would not have taken out just now. Taking advantage of the other people's confusion, he wanted to escape again. But it was another piece of white silk that tied him up from the most tricky angle. In the blink of an eye, he fell heavily to the ground. He fell in front of the elders. How many people does your Jiang family still have? Is everyone standing here? The elders only felt that the provocation in these words was too strong. Did he really look down on the strength of the elders? They were not confident that they could defeat Qin Yu. However, they had always been very powerful. Even if they didn't have enough people, it didn't mean that they had to ask everyone in the family to come up. He couldn't possibly win either. Forget it. The final result will be the same anyway. A gust of wind came from nowhere. However, this breeze was not enough to make people vigilant, until the wind became stronger and stronger, and they could even feel a piercing pain when it blew on their bodies. A ball of dancing golden flame appeared in Qin Yu's hand. With the power of Shenron, the flame became brighter and brighter. It even carried a boiling hot intent that shot straight to the sky. As the wind grew stronger and stronger, although it did not bring any danger or harm to the people. However, the power of the flame grew stronger and stronger. The wind fueled the flame. As soon as the flame landed, it quickly spread to the surroundings with an unstoppable force. All the people who were swept into the sea of fire could only scream. However, they could not get rid of or extinguish the bright golden flame on their bodies. The elders were caught off guard and more or less touched by the flame. Jiang Wenchang, on the other hand, didn't even have the chance to scream. He had been repeatedly injured and frightened. He couldn't get out of the flame no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he directly crippled himself. In the flame, he turned into a pile of black ashes in the blink of an eye. However, he was only the first person to die. There were also many people who would turn into dust in the flames and disappear from the world. The elders standing at the front were the first to be attacked. The attendants around the elders had long been reduced to dust. Only the elders could barely react at this moment. However, the flame burned bigger and bigger. Some of the elders could dodge it, while some couldn't. However, even if they could dodge it, they couldn't escape the encirclement of the flame. They could only make the flame leave their bodies temporarily. These were all people who seized the critical moment and cut off the connection between the flame and themselves very neatly. The others who didn't have time to do so were turned into ashes one after another. This should have been the scene that everyone wanted to see. However, seeing the huge Jiang family appear in the sea of fire in an instant, this meant that his flames did not intend to spread over and burn them as well. However, no one dared to approach those experts that they were afraid of. All of them turned into ashes in this fire. They didn't think that their strength could really compare to an entire family. None of the members of the Jiang family had the ability to resist. This already showed the power of the flame. Qin Yu glanced at his palm. He only tried to add some of Shenren's power into it. The effect was unexpectedly good. The power that was originally added together with those elders. Even if there was no way to extinguish the flame, they wouldn't be besieged by the flame so quickly. There was no defense at all. The reason for this was that Shenren's power had been added. The heat and temperature of the flame increased a little. It made them a little overwhelmed. Originally, it was a wisp of divine fire that had been scattered, and Shenren's power had strengthened it. Of course, these ordinary people couldn't escape. The members of the Jiang family weren't very powerful to begin with. They could block the endless flame. If it was slightly weaker, they might be able to suppress it with their powerful strength. However, in the situation where they were suppressed by the flame, their moves would only bring them greater disaster. If the wind was weak, it would only help the flame and not extinguish it. Crackling sounds could be heard as the flames burned. Most of the people avoided the source of the sound as if they were afraid of it. Chapter 1075. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The once glorious Jiang family was annihilated just like that. They didn't even leave a single survivor. Everything was destroyed in an instant. It was because they were blind and offended someone they shouldn't have offended. From then on, the words Qin Yu became taboo. Very few people knew why. However, those who knew about it all kept their mouths tightly shut without exception. They also kept the mouths of the people around them. That person was not someone they could easily talk about. Siduhua was even more clear about Qin Yu's speed of improvement. The next time they met, they might see each other break through on the sky screen. Now that Qin Yu had arrived in Shenzhen, if he could get some opportunities, he might even be able to break through to the true God realm. Just like Xiantian Shenzhen. This pair of master and disciple might become the only two divine venerables in the world. The Earth realm was extremely smooth. Although there were many experts there, it didn't develop. There were tribes everywhere. The scene was extremely chaotic for a while. Perhaps it was due to his good luck this time. Qin Yu immediately sensed the Kuan Earth Divine Dragon's presence as soon as he landed. This time, he didn't spend much words and didn't make any earth-shattering movements. After he expressed his intention, Shenron took the initiative to follow Qin Yu. It was also because he took the initiative to submit that the conditions of the contract were not harsh. The Kuan Earth Divine Dragon swore its loyalty obediently. Qin Yu, however, takes a walk around this place as usual, looking at the sceneries of the various large tribes. Occasionally, he left something behind and used it to benefit everyone for a lifetime. Those who had been helped remembered that there was such a person in this world. It was a pity that Qin Yu had only appeared for a short time. Otherwise, he might have left behind a legend. After more than a month, he returned to the immortal world again. This land was still the most familiar. But this time, he didn't come to find those who he used to be familiar with to talk about the old days. Instead, he came to find the bright Shenron. After arriving here, Kanshui Shenron recalled some things and could not help but feel a little emotional. When he received the summons, it was because he had fought with Qin Yu. It caused the surrounding space to become unstable, and it just so happened that someone had taken advantage of the loophole. As a result, a huge mess was created. The light Shinran had chased after him because of this. It was just that the two of them hadn't had a chance to speak properly for many years. As a fellow Shinran, Guangming Shinran couldn't do anything to him in the end. However, he did not expect that after this incident, he would still pay the price. Are you here to look for Guangming Shinran? Why don't I take you there now? Qin Yu refused. Since it was a place he was once familiar with, he would walk there himself. It wouldn't take long, and there was no need for anyone to take him away. In this way, it would take at most 10 days to half a month to reach Shinran. In the past, when he went to an exchange meeting, he could walk for more than half a month. However, things were different now. Even if he wanted to travel all over the immortal world, to him it was just a matter of a month. If he wanted to reach a place quickly, it would even take a day or two. There was no place that he couldn't go. With the peak strength of Senzen, he could already come and go as he pleased. If he could reach a higher level, he could cross time and space. It was just a thought. At that time, creating a world was his pursuit. Qin Yu was well aware of his own strength. With his current progress, it wouldn't be long before he could comprehend that higher realm. If he didn't take advantage of the fact that his strength hadn't increased yet. After walking around and gaining a deeper understanding of this world, if he really reached the true God realm, everything he could see would be even more different from the different realms. The place where he first settled down, Mr. Yun, was still the same as before. Moreover, he had been gone for so long, and there were still many stories and legends about him left behind. They hadn't completely dissipated until now, and all the people he knew got along well with him. He only went to take a look at the giant Dragon Valley and the Dragon Temple. Their development could only be considered mediocre over the years. There wasn't any good development at all, especially since the Dragon Temple had long disappeared without a trace. After he got rid of the Dark Dragon God, this big force still existed. But it had always been keeping its tail between its legs. Otherwise, they would have already lost the Dragon God that they believed in. What could they use to establish a foothold in this world where the strong were respected? But with the help of the prestige from the previous few stops, it could also be considered a small force with a little reputation. But because they lost the protection of the Dragon God, the development of the Dragon Temple could be said to be getting worse and worse. They hadn't made great progress. In the Dragon Temple, a white-haired man had a worried look on his face. Now they had long lost their master. But they couldn't find a real strong person who could bring them protection. They didn't have the slightest bit of nostalgia for the original Dark Dragon God, only resentment. Originally, they bowed their heads for the sake of powerful strength. But the Dark Dragon God was so easily defeated in the hands of others without understanding why. After he died, he even caused them a lot of trouble. If they weren't in the immortal world now and not the Dark Realm, who knows how many people would have pounced on him and gnawed on his bones. With their current awkward status, they could only barely establish a foothold here. No matter where they went, they would only end up in an extremely miserable state. Suddenly, the white-haired man moved slightly. He seemed to have felt that there was a super-strong person. No, it seemed that a venerable who was even more powerful than the Dark Shinran had arrived. Thinking of the blow he had suffered now and the difficulty of not having anyone to protect him, the white-haired man felt that this should be a chance given to him by the heavens. It was a great opportunity for him to regain his backing and stand at the top of this world again. That white-haired man still had some strength. To be able to hold on until now with the strength of an immortal, he could still be safe and sound. That was why it was difficult to move forward. He might be able to hold on until now. He had already proven that he was a capable person, and he didn't lack his own ambition. Previously, he was still borrowing the name of the Dark Dragon God. It was only because he hadn't found a better backer yet. If he could successfully curry favor with the Super Venerable this time, he would be able to get on the boat of a Super Venerable. He would be safe and sound after that. Qin Yu's whereabouts were hidden, but he didn't deliberately hide it. If someone were to investigate carefully, they would be able to find him. But generally speaking, not many people would deliberately check the identity of a passerby. Qin Yu was just about to return to Cloud County to take a look at the person who was determined to be his disciple back then. How hard had he worked now? Chapter 1076. Before seeing Qin Yu, the white-haired man had already made a series of preparations. To an expert, the only thing he could offer was loyalty and his lowly life. But the strong didn't need people like him. So he had to think of some other ways to catch the eyes of the strong. What surprised him was that there weren't many people following Qin Yu. There was only one woman, and it seemed that the two of them were traveling together. In this way, the white-haired man could dress himself up a little more low-key. He racked his brains and came up with a series of perfect plans. Money, fame, power, and beauty. Even if Qin Yu wasn't interested in any of these, he still held a secret that no one knew. This secret was of no use to him. But it might be able to play a miraculous role at the critical moment. Let Qin Yu think that he was also powerful and a useful person. Everything was after seeing Qin Yu's face. Looking at that pair of calm eyes, Lin Mingya thought. The natural pressure that belonged to the strong almost made the white-haired man unable to stand. He was stunned, and the first sentence he said was not the words he had carefully prepared. It was a doubt that came from the bottom of his heart. "Have we met before?" This sentence really seemed a little awkward. The white-haired man's expression was already very ugly. He couldn't believe that what came out of his mouth was actually such an ordinary sentence. Even he himself couldn't believe it. If someone were to say such a thing to him one day, he would definitely sneer. These words didn't seem to have any credibility. Moreover, he himself felt that it was impossible. If he had seen such a powerful expert in the past, he definitely wouldn't have left no impression on him. Such strength, such a natural pressure on the weak. If he had seen it before, he would definitely remember it firmly. Even such a person who was stronger than the Dark Dragon God, he was sure that he would definitely have second thoughts. He didn't have much loyalty to the so-called Dark Dragon God to begin with. If he had really seen it before, how could it be just a familiar face? Although the white-haired man's face was blue and purple, Qin Yu was extremely calm from beginning to end. He had indeed met this person once, but it was only a single meeting. "You spent so much effort to find out about my whereabouts, and now you've come to me. Don't tell me it's just to reminisce about the past?" The white-haired man had long known that everything he did would not escape the eyes of the strong. However, he did not expect that he had actually met this expert before. It hadn't been that long since that incident, but now that he thought about it, he felt a little dazed. How long had it been? Or was Qin Yu pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? He still believed in his own vision. Then, there was only one guess left that had the highest possibility. In such a short period of time, a person who hadn't even reached the immortal monarch realm had become a super venerable who was many times more powerful than the Dark Dragon God. Thinking of this, the white-haired man immediately knelt down. He prostrated himself on all fours as he spoke of his only capital. "I have the bloodline of the Phoenix, so I know the habitat of the Phoenix clan. I am willing to use the power of my bloodline to lead Master to the habitat of the Phoenix clan." Although it was a little rushed, it was rare to meet such a powerful expert. A powerful expert who could break through to such a realm in such a short period of time. That was one of a kind in the world. If he couldn't even see through this, then he wouldn't be him. The Phoenix clan was, of course, extremely noble and powerful. However, the phoenixes in the ninefold divine realm had not been drawn out for many years. The habitat of the Phoenix clan was also extremely mysterious. "I'm not interested. You can go find someone else." It was just the habitat of the Phoenix clan. If he wanted to go, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Although this person still had some capital, he could be considered to have something that many people could only dream of. However, to him, these things that others dreamed of were really not worth mentioning. The Phoenix clan did indeed have a unique advantage. Even compared to the Dragon clan, they were on par. However, there was no way they could be compared to the 9 great origins of Shinran. According to legend, the Phoenix clan also had the assistance of a divine bird. However, that divine bird had always been very mysterious. He didn't want to complicate matters. All in all, the bargaining chip in the white-haired man's hand was indeed very big for others. It was enough for him to have a certain right to speak wherever he went. However, to Qin Yu, this was the most ridiculous thing. Because he had never lacked these, and he didn't need others. Bai Li was even more panicked. Originally, he thought that this was a capital to take out. It should more or less make Qin Yu look at him differently. However, he didn't expect that not only did he not look at him differently, he wasn't even excited at all. He didn't care at all. He even asked him to go find someone else. However, if he could really find someone else, it wouldn't have been delayed until now. If it wasn't an absolute expert, he would never be willing to bow down so easily. It wasn't easy to meet an existence with extremely powerful talent in this world. If it was someone else, how could he be willing? Even when he did things, he was unwilling to do them. I can take you to the Dark Realm to find the treasures left behind by the Dark Dragon God. I can take you to find the secret of immortality, and I just want to stay by your side as an insignificant servant. The first 2 sentences couldn't make Qin Yu stop in his track. What so-called treasures? He had never bothered to pick up the trash left behind by others. What secret of immortality? In this world, only by increasing one's strength could one truly obtain a longer life. Perhaps for some old experts in their twilight years, the secret of immortality was enough to make them go crazy. However, he was now in his prime, and if he wanted to increase his strength, it was right in front of him. After reaching the true God level, the secret of immortality was even less worth mentioning. He only paused for a moment in the last sentence, but it was only for a moment. If you had been honest early, maybe I could have given you a minute. After Qin Yu left, the white-haired man sat on the ground somewhat dispiritedly. He didn't care about his image at all. At this moment, he was thinking about a question. Was he really wrong? Just now, he shouldn't have used such a method to try to attract Qin Yu's attention. Instead, he should have said what he wanted from the very beginning. Maybe Qin Yu would really give him a chance. However, now that they were separated, he didn't know how long it would be before they could meet again. Lan Feng awakened the indestructible divine body some time ago. I heard that the experts of various forces want to rope in the young city lord as their disciple. Such a great thing. Chapter 1077. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. There was a rumbling sound. One of them left with a pale face, clutching his abdomen in pain. He did not forget to leave behind a string of harsh words. Lan Feng had already chased them out for the umpteenth time. He found it hard to accept doing such things once or twice, but after doing so many times, he got used to it. At first, Lan Xia could not accept it either. These people were all experts sent by the various factions, and they were chased out just like that. Even if Lan Feng had a bright future, if he was being watched closely by others, he would be killed in the cradle. Wouldn't that be a waste of such great talent? Originally, he wanted to keep the peace, but there were too many uncertain things in this world. There were indeed some people who took advantage of the fact that they did not dare to resist and directly snatched people away. Plus, Lan Feng had already done the same thing too many times. He decided not to bother about it anymore. But among these people who were chased out, there was no lack of those who were truly prestigious. Experts who were good enough to be a good teacher. Tell me, are you still thinking about Qin Yu? Seeing Lan Feng remain silent, what else could Lan Xia not understand? but he was somewhat unable to accept it. I've already told you long ago, that's not even in the same world as us. Qin Yu's future is destined to be bright. Look at you, after you obtain the indestructible divine body, you barely raised your strength to a mortal lord. But with his talent, he's probably already a sage king by now. Maybe he's thinking about how to raise his strength faster and break through to Shenzhen in a short period of time. Lan Xia's words made him feel a little guilty. But thinking about it, his progress would become slower and slower. Lan Feng's current achievements were already extremely terrifying. How could it be so easy to break through to the next realm in a short period of time? Lan Feng's temper had indeed been worn down during this period of time, but he was still extremely stubborn about taking someone as his teacher. The price to pay to awaken the indestructible divine body was unimaginable for ordinary people. Although it was extremely impressive, luck, strength, and endurance were all indispensable. He had also gone through many tests before he could barely possess the full power of the indestructible divine body. In his opinion, ordinary people were definitely not qualified to be his teacher. So these people who wanted to take in disciples were all chased back by him. He had always wanted to keep his promise, but at his current realm, he basically relied more on luck. If he was not lucky enough to awaken the indestructible divine body, and Lan Xia, at this moment there was no way he could maintain his extremely fast cultivation speed. But if he continued to advance, he would not be able to get a better legacy. He had to take in. Otherwise, he could only stagnation. Or perhaps he had gone mad from thinking too much about it. By then, all his efforts, is translation and translation. Translation, Lan. Countless people laughed at him. Teacher Lan master translation of master. If you still don't come back, your talented disciple will be forcefully taken away by someone else. Those people are crazy about taking in disciples. They even want to snatch me back. Because he As a result, many large sects, whose pride had been hurt, were even more unwilling to admit defeat and sent even more experts. It was all for the sake of making him obediently acknowledge him as his master. With such a strong disciple, those sects would naturally be able to gain face. It had already become a competition between the big powers. It was already turbulent and not very calm. In addition to the matter of taking in disciples, everyone was frustrated. No one knew where it came from. Whoever had the ability to take in this disciple would be worthy of being the number one master, regardless of whether it was for the title of number one or for this disciple with outstanding talent. Everyone took action. Some of them were calmer. Some people even wanted to tie him up and kidnap him when the time came. Then they told the public that he was willing to accept, and he cried and begged to be taken in. Who would be able to expose him then? Because of this, the small cloud immortal city had been in trouble recently. Qin Yu heard this chatter from not far away. Speaking of which, he had not decided to take in this little guy as his disciple. He actually called him master and rejected so many people. But now, he changed quite well. To be able to have such strength and improve at such a speed. For a prodigy who was originally considered to be quite talented, it was also an extremely difficult thing. In this world, to obtain opportunities, one had to endure danger. Lan Feng had already passed the initial test. He did not know if it was an illusion, but Lan Feng felt as if someone was looking at him. But he was holding the most valuable detection Dharma instrument on him. He looked around, but he did not find any strangers. Strange, could it be that I felt wrongly? As he walked forward, he seemed to have thrown the previous matter to the back of his mind. Lan Feng suddenly turned back and looked in a direction. That was the place where Qin Yu had stopped just now. But he only stopped for a moment. So now there was almost no difference when he looked over. He could only conclude that he was a little too cautious and paranoid. But just as he was about to walk over and temporarily throw this strange phenomenon to the back of his mind, a new person appeared on the spot. And he seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Lan Feng did not see how this person appeared. He could not help but blink to make sure that his eyes were not playing tricks on him. No need to blink. I am right here. You were not deceived. Lan Feng started to wonder if someone had found out who the master that he truly acknowledged in his heart was. That was why he created an almost identical camouflage spell. In order to trick him out. As a bargaining chip in the fight between the major forces, he had experienced such means before. But none of them were as real as this one. So real that he felt that perhaps he had really seen Qin Yu again. Lan Feng did not hesitate at all. He pounced on him and called him master. Although he had many guesses and questions in his heart. But after all, there was a big difference between a real person and a camouflage spell. He would not be unable to recognize this. If he could not even recognize the master that he acknowledged, then he might as well just be kidnapped by others. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Master, you must have come back to take me in as your disciple. I've done my best. You can come and test my results. Lan Feng lifted his chin proudly. After all, he was just a young man. To have such achievements in such a short time made him feel that he was very impressive. The reason why he had been trying so hard earlier was to make Qin Yu have a whole new level of respect for him. Chapter 1078. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. But the results of his hard work were enough to catch the world's attention. They couldn't enter Qin Yu's eyes at all. To him, these results could only be considered good. It could prove that Lan Feng had worked hard, but that was all. It wasn't enough to make him look at him in a different light. Lan Feng obviously didn't notice this. After not getting an answer, he still wanted to pursue it. He wanted to ask about Qin Yu's strength. Obviously, he was prepared to make Qin Yu his goal and continue to work hard. Originally, Qin Yu didn't want to hurt the confidence of a young man with some talent. But he kept being interrogated, so he could only show his current strength. But he just let go and didn't tell him about his current realm. Lan Feng's face turned pale. Now, Qin Yu didn't have to say anything. He could also understand that Qin Yu's strength improved faster than he imagined. This kind of strength was many times more powerful than his. If Qin Yu had so many changes, then it was no wonder. At this moment, Lan Feng felt that he wasn't qualified to be taken in as a disciple by such a powerful person. He was feeling complacent because of his own opportunity. But over there, Qin Yu's strength had already reached the top. In the whole ninefold divine realm, who dared to say that their strength was much stronger than Qin Yu's? With your current strength, can you destroy this city casually? Lan Feng was already guessing to a higher level. But after all, he didn't have much vision. Even though he was being sought after by many people recently and became a popular genius, but he hadn't been out of this city often. His estimation of the strongest experts in the outside world was also a little too low. It wasn't just a city. He didn't even need Qin Yu to use his full strength. As long as he wanted to, this city could be destroyed by him anytime. Just like the Jiang family back then, it was easily destroyed by him. One must know that the land occupied by a big family was comparable to a city. He could easily destroy a big family, leaving almost no survivors. Destroying a city was an even simpler matter. If you've seen more of the wider world, you won't ask this question. Standing in your current position, what you can see is already not enough. You need a master, or you can just go out and explore with your weapons. You need to have a deeper understanding of the world, or you'll only stop. Lan Feng didn't seem to understand. In fact, he didn't understand what this meant at all. But there was one thing he could understand. That was that he now needed a master, otherwise he wouldn't be able to develop. He knew about this point himself. But he didn't think those people. Originally, he didn't think those people to was as translation as Qin Yu. Now after he felt translation, now after he is translation now he that, his determination, his to those translation to translation their translation. They experts' translation s's experts. None translation as translation at like at as at, that was that. They were to that they were inferior as to was to, s to was to that if t had to addis maybe, he would have been kidnapped in the end. At that time, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only compromise. But now it was different. Lan Feng knelt down and kowtowed without hesitation. Since he couldn't do it without a master, he didn't think much of other people. He only had this one choice. As for whether Qin Yu would think highly of him or not, he didn't have so much time to think about it. Even if he didn't think highly of him, he had to give it a try. Maybe he would succeed. Take me as your disciple. I've been waiting for you here for a long time. The others can't even compare to 1/10,000th of you. Even if you don't take me as your disciple, you won't compromise easily. Lan Feng had made up his mind this time. No matter what the final result was, he couldn't compromise with those people. What did those people think of him as? Did they think he was omnipotent? Obviously, he didn't want to be the disciple of any of them. Yet, they still treated him as a bargaining chip. Anyway, those people added together couldn't even compare to Qin Yu's ability. At that moment, he couldn't care so much. He just followed his heart. The reason why Qin Yu appeared this time was because he had the same intention. Since Lan Feng could withstand so much pressure, and he was indeed a person who could endure hardship, then why couldn't he give him a chance? Moreover, did he need a reason to take him as a disciple? You can be my disciple, but I'll give you one last chance to choose. I don't have much time to teach you. Soon, I'll try to break through to real God and try to find the realm above real God. In a short period of time, you may have a huge breakthrough, or you may achieve nothing. If it's the former, it's okay. If it's the latter, I don't mind throwing you back to Lansha for your old age. After all, a useless piece of trash that couldn't be supported by mud only had this little value. Lan Feng only hesitated for a while when he heard that it would be difficult. Then, he thought things through. First of all, he wasn't that kind of person. Second, he had enough confidence in himself. Maybe other people would miss such a good opportunity. However, he had to make good use of this opportunity. Anyway, he didn't like other people. Qin Yu was willing to give him such a chance. He was already very surprised. As long as he could make good use of this opportunity. After that, he would be able to gain a lot from it. Even if he said it out loud, it would be enough to make him feel proud. Moreover, it was clear that he could learn even more things from Qin Yu. And it wasn't like other big and small forces, which were so troublesome. Since you've already agreed, there's no room for regret. Go and prepare the apprenticeship gift. Lan Feng was a little surprised. Then, he realized that he had already fulfilled his wish. In this way, the big problem of apprenticeship had been solved. Lansha didn't expect that one day, he would be able to see Qin Yu again. Previously, he could faintly see that Qin Yu wasn't an ordinary person. It was because of this guess that he had been extremely respectful, and he didn't dare to provoke Qin Yu. Even if he had left for so long, he had been letting him go. There were many rumors in the city. Now that they met again, it only made his guess become a reality. Not only was Qin Yu not in any danger, but his strength had also improved greatly. He couldn't tell to what extent he had improved. But at least one thing was, he was more terrifying than all the people he had seen. Chapter 1079. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. It made him tremble with fear. Originally, the father and son were very careful about this apprenticeship. They even prepared a lot of red tape. They wanted to make this thing more detailed. But at the last moment, Lansha suddenly removed most of the steps. The most important thing in this matter was sincerity. Moreover, according to his experience, Qin Yu might not necessarily like this kind of complicated and elaborate ceremony. He was afraid that when the time came, they would think that they had done their best, but it would be the wrong thing to do. Don't make things too complicated, especially for such a strong person. It's your honor that he is willing to take you as his disciple. But don't ask for more. Apprenticeship mostly depends on us, so don't let him get involved too much. Even for strong people, there was no such thing as exhaustion. But it was so complicated, so troublesome. Who knew if Qin Yu would lose his patience because of this? Even if he was just unhappy, Lansha wanted to avoid this situation. Lan Feng knew even less, so he didn't think of the more complicated things. In the end, when Qin Yu came again, a lot of the procedures were directly reduced. And this apprenticeship ceremony was only held in front of his own family, with only a few people knowing about it. Of course, the apprenticeship ceremony had to be made public. It was just that it was up to Qin Yu whether or not his master's identity was exposed. It could be said that he had thought it through very thoroughly. It was just that he was a little too careful in some places. Qin Yu drank the apprenticeship tea that Lan Feng personally brewed. The apprenticeship ceremony was coming to an end. Suddenly, a palm-sized bronze mirror appeared in his hand. Although it looked very simple and ordinary, it was extremely powerful. It could be used as a heart-protecting mirror. That bronze mirror could also shine through many illusions. This bronze mirror could be used to contact people far away, and it could also be used to set up a spirit formation. It could be used to increase one's cultivation. There were more and more uses, but each of them could be put to good use. Lan Feng couldn't help but feel a little excited when he received this gift. There were so many functions, and none of them were good things with useless functions. He had never seen it before. Logically speaking, it should have two functions. Furthermore, their functions were very powerful, which was already very valuable. Not to mention, not only was it convenient to carry around, it could also be used for defense, communication, cultivation, and so on. It could even see through illusions. All the functions listed here would be of great help to him. Obviously, no matter what kind of trouble he encountered in the future, all of them would come in handy. Wasn't it a bit too much of a waste to give him such an all-rounder? Waste? Since I've accepted you as my disciple, I naturally won't be short of these things. Do you think that with my current strength, I would be interested in these things? The copper mirror is only enough for you to use before you break through. After that, there was no way for it to be of much use. At the very least, after his strength increased, it would be a relatively ordinary item. Of course, its value would not decrease. Even if it was transferred to someone else, it could still be sold for an extremely high price. At least in the entire Cloud Immortal City, there were not many such treasures. Lan Feng couldn't help but be shocked. Initially, he only thought that Qin Yu had such strength. This kind of talent was the best candidate. At the very least, he was many times better than those sanctimonious hypocrites. Moreover, those people kept calling themselves experts. Compared to Qin Yu's talent, they were simply a bunch of trash. But now, holding the item in his hand that Qin Yu personally said was insignificant, he couldn't help but feel a little dazed. Even such a precious item was insignificant. He didn't dare to imagine what was the most precious item. Qin Yu didn't tell this new disciple how many treasures he had in his hands. The reason why he accepted this disciple was because he had a deeper consideration. The speed at which his strength increased was obviously much faster than ordinary people. Even a genius couldn't compare to 1/10,000th of him. With such a fast speed, Li Yunmu was able to move as fast as he could. As long as he could subdue all of Shinran, his strength would break through to a higher realm. It was an easy and natural thing to do. As for the realm above real God, even if he wasn't being arrogant, he already had a deep understanding of it, and his future path was already very smooth. Everything that was incomparably difficult in the eyes of others became natural to him. It was even natural. Lan Feng kept all these items in his arms with some trepidation and awe. But he still felt that it was a little unreal. He really succeeded in becoming a disciple. Not only did he succeed in becoming a disciple, but he also got a very, very good item. He didn't dare to think about such a good treasure before. As for the future, he might be able to hope for more. With such a powerful master, he could have anything he wanted. Qin Yu found it hard to understand Lan Feng's excitement. After all, these things were too common and ordinary for him. He still had many similar things that he could take out casually. Higher-level ones were also very easy things. If it wasn't for the fact that this new disciple wouldn't be arrogant for a period of time, and he wouldn't be too proud and complacent because of the things he gave out and become lazy because of it, he could still take out more things. He could even directly increase a person's strength. With a lot of resources, it was very easy to increase one's strength. It was just that the more talented a person was, the more they were used to progressing step by step. Otherwise, there might be many drawbacks. For example, the state of mind and strength couldn't be compared. Another example was whether it would cause a loss of control of one's strength. All of this was an extremely profound knowledge. Lan Feng was confused, but he could still make out the meaning behind his word. It must be very meaningful. And these must be secrets that couldn't be passed on. These things were very important, so he memorized all of them. Qin Yu's disciple recruitment this time could be considered to have ended here. But just as he said, he didn't have much time to teach. But even so, Lan Feng could still quickly break through his strength under his guidance. 10 days was the limit of the time he could stay. It wasn't impossible for him to stay for more time. But if this continued, it would delay things. Moreover, this was already a great help to Lan Feng. If he stayed for longer, he might not be able to digest what he said at all. Now that his state was so high, just a few words of advice would be enough for Lan Feng to seriously learn for a long time. Chapter 1080. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Shenron of Light had long known that there would be such a tribulation. So he didn't leave, but stayed in the place where he used to live. How could he not know that the place where he lived had been exposed long ago? Other than himself, there were not many people who could break through the shortcut here. He successfully entered the interior. But there were always exceptions in this world, even if most people didn't have that ability. But there was one person who definitely had such strength, and that person had already found them, in order to find them and subdue them. Perhaps this was fate. Except for him, most of Shinran had already recognized Qin Yu as their master. Even he himself probably couldn't escape this fate now. One after another, his brothers bowed their heads to Qin Yu. They couldn't escape. Even those who had resisted fiercely back then were now obedient and obedient. Shenron of Light already knew these things. He couldn't resist at all. After seeing Qin Yu, he almost didn't hesitate at all. When he was at a disadvantage in the competition with Qin Yu, he signed the contract without hesitation. But he didn't want to leave easily. He just wanted to protect this world. He didn't have any extra demands. He didn't want to see the outside world. He didn't want to see others make a fool of themselves, and he didn't want to improve his strength. Even if this was the pursuit of most of the original Shinran. But he just wanted to continue to stay here. Then he would quietly watch the changes in this world. Since you have already thought of your own path, I won't force you. After Qin Yu refined the essence and blood of Shinran in his hand, his strength was completely improved to the peak. Now he even had the ability to challenge the heavenly tribulation. But he had a feeling that he should wait until all the essence and blood of Shinran was collected. Then he would make a real breakthrough. At that time it would be easy. Anyway, he wasn't in a hurry now. The essence and blood of Shinran was the most important thing. At the moment, this was also the most important thing for him. Shinran lowered its huge head with a serious look on its face. He knew that the fact that he could continue to stay was already Qin Yu's greatest tolerance for him. He no longer had any extravagant requests, only gratitude. As for the other members of Shinran, they all had their own ideas. If it weren't for the fact that they were unwilling, they could also request to return to their own world. Perhaps it was because the speed of Qin Yu's breakthrough had surprised them. He even had ambitions. She wanted to use the position beside Qin Yu to see if she could pursue more and see more places. The light Shinran had no right to stop this. It didn't even have the right to make a fuss. This was because all Shinran children had an extremely powerful instinct from the moment they were born. That was to build a world that belonged to him. He wanted to see what it was like to be above a true god. But perhaps it was because he didn't have enough talent, or perhaps it was because there was a world that tied down all of Shinran. No matter how much he tried to increase his strength, it was also impossible to find out what realm was above a true god. But Qin Yu's speed of improvement was too fast, which surprised and shocked them. If she could see that even higher level of cultivation beside Qin Yu, maybe they could also benefit from it for life. It was as if Qin Yu's blue blood had never come. But after all, he had left a disciple in this world. Very few people knew his identity, but he still had a clone. Although with his current strength, he didn't need a clone at all. But after all, the clone used to have an identity. When he took in disciples, he used this identity. Many people who were exposed to the outside world had a feeling of fear. For this genius who used to be extremely popular, most people also stopped thinking about it. At least the experts of those sects knew how they were in a difficult situation back then. They wagged their tails and begged for mercy. There was even a portion of them who later escaped and signed a master-servant contract. Of course, they couldn't do anything. Otherwise, if they found out, not to mention the power of the contract, if Qin Yu were to casually attack them, all of them would die. Under Lan Feng's curiosity, Qin Yu didn't hide anything from him and told him about the past. Lan Feng really couldn't help but want to go out and say it. Before leaving, Qin Yu didn't say too much. He hesitated and finally couldn't help but secretly leak the news. Everyone was in an uproar. It turned out that Qin Yu was the dragon who had only appeared once and extorted the entire immortal world. This could be said to be an uproar. Everyone couldn't hold it in. They all went to Xiantian sect to ask for an explanation. But the people of Xiantian sect also felt wronged. Back then, they were the ones who were cheated the most. Everyone was cheated. Why did they have to look for them? Was it just because Xiantian Shenzhen was someone who walked out of their world? This was a little too unfair. Almost everyone thought so. Xiantian sect leader only felt as if he had eaten the most bitter Chinese herb. His mouth and heart were so bitter that it made him tremble. In the end, there was nothing he could do. He could only apologize and stand on the same side as everyone else. Of course, they only temporarily reached a united front. But they didn't have the guts to really attack Xiantian Shenzhen's beloved disciple. What would Qin Yu, who had powerful strength, do? Although they didn't know that Xiantian Shenzhen was now a divine master of a generation. But even the strength that he had shown before made them not dare to move. This time, he was originally prepared to go to the Dark Realm. But halfway there was a small accident. In the void, he was attacked all of a sudden. The attacker had been hiding in the thick fog and refused to show his figure. Only an extremely huge eye was revealed, which made people shudder when they saw it. With such a huge eye, one didn't know how huge the body was. Qin Yu looked at this eye and felt a sense of familiarity. Back then, when Kanshui Shinran was moving around, it created a small crack. In the end, it tore the entire sky apart. It was this guy. But what was its purpose? Just to get rid of this space-time? But why did it suddenly attack him? Qin Yu had many trump cards in his hands. Even if this monster faced him directly, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. But this monster didn't have any intention of fighting with him at all. It had been hiding far away and only came over to interfere with his journey. In the end, it caused him to fall into a thundercloud. Of course, in the end, he was still unharmed, but he couldn't control where he landed. Now, he didn't know where he was. Looking at the lightning that had been flashing around him, Qin Yu had a rough guess. Chapter 1081. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. If his guess was right, then there was no need to leave. But what was in the void? What was it? Was it a void demon? It also seemed to be very, very powerful. If it was really a void demon, what was its purpose? The truly powerful void devils all had their own thoughts and wisdom. It was impossible for it to be a monster without any reason. Qin Yu, who suddenly fell from the sky, became the target of many people's attention. It seemed that everyone in the Thunder World was extremely bold, even strangers dared to approach. There was not much naivety, just pure curiosity. And they were indeed very bold. After one of them sensed the natural threat from Qin Yu's body, he immediately changed his mind. He could not help but want to take a closer look at the person who fell from the sky. However, before he succeeded, Qin Yu had already seen through everything in his surroundings. He took a step back and had a general understanding of this place. The customs of the Thunder World were also a little different from other places. This place had been hidden from the world for a long time, and there was almost no contact with the outside world. Of course, as a divine world, even if there was not much contact with the outside world, it was enough to be self-sufficient, and then develop into an independent world. Of course, the most powerful people here almost all had the surname Lei. Even if they did not have the surname Lei in the early stages, they would change it later on. Because this was an honor, and only people who were strong enough could have this honor. Who the hell are you? Where did you come from? Is there a world in the sky? Did you come from the city in the sky? He couldn't have escaped from the Thunderbird's nest, right? The Thunderbird was a kind of creature that made people tremble in fear. It was extremely tall, and it had a human body, with lightning all over its body. Of course, every feather was also extremely tough. It was also of very good material. Thunderbirds and humans hunted and guarded against each other. And the Thunderbird's nest was often all in the sky. The experts who were captured by the Thunderbirds were unknown. Countless Thunderbirds died in the hands of humans. The Thunderbird race was said to have the Phoenix bloodline, but they were extremely ugly. They had an eagle-like mouth and rock-like wings, and extremely sharp claws, looking like tigers and wolves. They were extremely wide. But in the past, although there were people who thought about whether they could tame these creatures as their own mounts, however, no one had ever succeeded. Everyone had died at the hands of the Thunderbird. Since then, it was a fight to the death. No. Excuse me, I want to go over. Fortunately, he didn't bring Xuelan along this time. Xuelan stayed in the immortal world to teach Lan Feng. After all, he would not be out for long this time. At most, it would only be a few months. Xuelan during these months, she was staying in these few months. Xuelan. Keeping up with him would not be of much use. Translation when translation went to translation translation. This feeling of intimidation wasn't very strong. But it translation, everyone translation. Then, they subconsciously translation. After they stepped aside, everyone was still in disbelief. Why did they so? Was it because was? So much so that one look was enough to make everyone give way to him. But more people felt that this was not possible. It was even a little ridiculous. If a person could influence millions of people with their gaze alone, they would be able to do so. What kind of strength was this? Had he reached the peak of the world? But these people did not think that their guess was right. Qin Yu had already reached the peak to begin with. As long as there was no true God, his strength was the highest in the world. Leaving the place where the crowd was the densest, there were countless flashes of lightning around. And the shops around him had all kinds of lightning and treasures of all kinds of colors. But he had no interest in these things. So, he kept walking forward without looking to the side. He did not know how long he had walked, but he finally stood in front of a unique shop. It was also the only place where he could temporarily stay. This place could be said to be good in almost every aspect, but there was one point where the prices were too high. However, the gold coins here were very similar to the purple gold coins that he had stored before. So, he temporarily paid with the purple coins that he had not used before. But just as he took out the purple coins to replace the gold coins, the eyes of the person at the front desk immediately changed. Although these purple coins could be used in the Thunderworld, but the price of these purple coins was very, very high. It was almost to the point of sky high. One purple coin could almost be compared to 10,000 ordinary gold coins. No matter how high the price was, it was impossible to spend 10,000 gold coins for a night. Moreover, Qin Yu did not take out 1 or 2 purple coins. It was a big bag. The receptionist could not count how many there were in such a big bag. Could it be 10, 100, or 1,000? Please wait here for a moment. I can't make the decision for such a big sum of money. The receptionist, who was originally pretty, was as gentle as water to Qin Yu. But unfortunately, Qin Yu did not care about all this. The woman could only run to the back angrily. Then, she pulled a middle-aged man and whispered into his ear for a long time. The two of them looked over from time to time. Soon, the woman disappeared. The middle-aged man walked over with a smile and saw the pile of purple coins. He began to estimate the value in his heart. With his eyesight, he could see that this half-bag of purple coins was at least 1,000 gold coins. He could even judge that it should be around 1,100. His eyesight had almost never been wrong. It was very, very rare for there to be a mistake. So, he even dared to use his life as a guarantee. He had never seen so many luxurious purple coins. Naturally, he was very attentive to Qin Yu. But Qin Yu just wanted to stay here temporarily. If this extra money could help him find some information, it would be good. After all, he had a small mountain of these things. These funds were given to them by someone in the beginning. It was a few 100,000 gold coins, but they only took out a small pile. If he were to take out that mountain of purple coins, he would be able to do it. Most likely, everyone's jaws would drop in shock. You want to find information? I don't know what you want to find out. We also provide information here. Of course, he wanted to pull all this money into his pocket. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.